That's right, everybody. As always, thank you so much for tuning in and taking this journey with me. Happy Saturday to you all. It's a pretty rare day of the week for me to be able to live stream. Now, I am hoping that I got all those audio issues fixed. So, by all means, please tell me in the chat if I did, or if I still sound too low, please let me know. But I ran extensive tests prior just to make sure that I would be able to broadcast with you all on this Saturday and not have any types of issues. So there is a ton to cover, and why I'm here on a Saturday, uh, and it may not happen often, but it just so happens that my family abandoned me. I'm a bachelor on this Saturday. They had a few different plans with parties, get-togethers, and stuff that my wife said, "Hey, you take a day." And I was like, awesome. And then I looked around. I was like, what am I going to do? So I did some housework. And here I am. I was like, you know what? I want to make this video. There was a couple videos that I wanted to make. And I just decided to go ahead and combine it all into one show. No idea how long this will take, but I figured I'll just hang out with you guys. We'll go ahead and go over some of the bigger stories that I published this week. For those who tuned in on the last show, you know that just some personal obligations had kind of kept me tied up a little bit from the free time stuff, my hobby stuff, which is what I'm doing now. So life just kind of got in the way there, but it's been really, really good to have that kind of freed up now. So away from parenting and my normal day job, it's been fun to be able to kind of sneak away a little bit, take a break from all of that, and write some articles for you guys, and obviously do some videos. So it's going to be, a fun show here on a Saturday. So I do appreciate you all spending a little bit of your day with me. I hope that it's going to be interesting enough for you guys to keep you through, but I understand, obviously, I'm going to be dealing with a lot of different issues. Some of you may pop in and out. On YouTube, we've got the live chat channel going. I will try and find the questions as they arise. For those who decide to donate to the channel, everything goes 100% into the making of this channel, the FOIA work that I talk about here, different filing fees if they arise. Not all requests have fees, but that's what all that money goes to. So for those who do super chats, you might see I pull those questions first. Those are pretty easy for me to see on my software. Anything else, put everything in all caps. I know it's just kind of a bad faux pas on the internet chat rooms, but be that as it may, it's a little bit easier for me to see. It's just iced tea. Roberto Sanchez, thank you so much for that super sticker and supporting me here on this channel. So that's exactly what I mean is anybody that decides to do that, again, it goes right back into it. And I literally show the receipts when I get those FOIA bills. So some of the stories this week, as you may have saw on the social media posts, is Dan, it is great to see you, buddy. Hell yeah, Dad's Club. That's right. I am a proud member of that club with, for those who don't know, an 11-year-old son and a 6-year-old daughter. My son is an amazing little soccer player. He is a goalie. You will see me post photos all the time of him. And my daughter has really excelled, my proud dad moment, in gymnastics and is doing excellent with that, advancing, rang the bell again for one of the things that she does. I'm still learning all the names of it when they're doing gymnastics, but rang the bell last night and is trying out actually for a competitive team here in the next week or so to kind of advance even more. So super proud. Okay. So Dan, hello. And that's my proud dad moment. But it's definitely good to see you. So some of the stories this week, they were a lot of fun to write because the great thing about FOIA is I have absolutely no idea what's going to come into my mailbox. And for those who did watch me on social media the other day, I kind of like teased out a story. Hey, I got a FOIA drop. And I don't tease long, I usually do it about an hour or two beforehand, but it's always funny to see the reactions. I mean, I always deliver. I only tease when I'm going to, publish, with the exception of like one article in nearly 30 years I had to delay. But other than that, it's fun to see the reactions. People get so amped up and so, frustrated that I say, oh, coming soon. And then the comments are gold. But that said, one of the articles had to kind of switch the order because I got new records that I wasn't expecting. So that's really the fun for me in FOIA, and the fact that you just have no idea what you're going to get, especially if you're like me, a high volume requester. Admittedly, I do file a lot. But as you can see, I put it all out to you. I just don't bog the system for no reason, but rather try and get all of that to you, archive everything online 100% in its entirety. And that's partially why I do what I do, to make sure you guys all have access to that. And hopefully that will spark some ideas on your end. And I really encourage other people to use FOIA. Later in this video, we're going to talk about that a little bit. And why I say it that way is that I'm going to profile some of the stories I wrote this week. But later in the video, a lot of you saw my comment on a YouTube thread where they were asking about the Mosul Orb footage that surfaced from another FOIA requester. And that is an awesome story. I want to preface all of this with that. It is awesome that there are people utilizing the FOIA and the tools that are available to them to get information out. What's unfortunate is how others take that information and then essentially exploit it for their own gain. And on top of that, make it something that it's not. Because in the end, it cheapens what that triumph is for that particular person. But on top of that, it takes away from the true importance of what they did and essentially just makes it a little bit, tainted and sadly diminishes the importance of it. So we're going to talk about that later, because I had decided not to do the video based on your reactions and your questions and the amount of comments that I got on YouTube and X. We'll be going over that as well. So let me go ahead and bring up the presentation here, because I was able to make a PowerPoint and kind of throw a lot of these visuals in. That way we will be able to, better talk about this as we go through. So let me just kind of switch a window here in the background. Sorry about this. One more. It's Saturday. I love my iced tea on a Saturday. All right. So first story we're going to talk about is one of the newer ones, came more later in the week, but very important. And I think that it created a lot of excitement and then a lot of confusion and then a lot of, oh, it's just airplanes, it's not drones. So I want to start here. Now, what did I get? Well, last December, for those of you who watched the UAP space and how drones kind of infiltrate that discussion, and I truly believe that drones are a part of the UAP discussion. I'm sorry, that doesn't mean it's everything. UAP is all drones, but it's a very important part of this discussion because we are seeing an influx of this type of technology. I know a lot of people try and say, oh, this is a phenomena that needs to be looked at, and they don't see it for what it is. These drone encounters, I think, are a national security issue. I think we should look into them, and they are part of that broader UAP conversation that truly does encompass a strange and unexplained aspect of whatever it is that's at the root of this. But these drones are kind of coming along with it. And I'm not on the bandwagon of trying to say these are the true UAP mystery. On the contrary, for those who do follow my work, UAPs, UFOs obviously are very popular on this channel and something I love talking about, but it is definitely not the majority of actually what I file. In fact, the black box, I've said this a couple times, a lot of people don't believe me. The archive that I've built over 30 years, almost 30 years, I started in 96, which is literally millions and millions of pages now. It is less than, I think, 5% UFO related. So 95% plus is other stuff. And so the national, and it surrounds like national security, secrets, yes, mysterious phenomena and other angles away from UFOs. So I deal with kind of those fringe elements as well. But my point being is that the majority of it is national security related issues. So I'm really super intrigued by a lot of these topics for that reason. But again, sometimes the audience on social media, those that really want to believe, they will kind of conflate all of it. And when they hear drones, they boom, instantly go to that mysterious, unexplained phenomena aspect of this. And yes, I use plural for a reason. I know there's a lot of people that love to correct grammar. I do use the plural version because I think there's multiple facets of this whole topic. So phenomena, I think there's multiple things. That said, I kind of separate the two, and I think that we need to deal with that. It's important to see these documents as well, because then you get kind of that inside look at what is truly going on when it comes to those drone incursions. Now, my whole long-winded diatribe there's a reason for it, and that reason is because when you can start to see the documents come out and the witness testimony either declassified or if it's unclassified for official use only, then it's reviewed for release and obviously redacted in some areas because, again, there's a differentiation between the two. But that said, when you see all of that, then you really start to see in the eyes of the government and the U.S. military what the difference is between those drones, which are, again, a national security concern and a problem and something that needs to be dealt with. But there's a difference. And that's where you can really get those quote unquote debunkers. I hate that term, but essentially get them in those debates and say, well, wait a minute, you kind of lean towards all this drone. Well, now we have a primer to look at, right? To me, I see these as keys to kind of unraveling a lot of these mysteries, because when you can start to read this and you look at drone incursions and quadcopters like this one, I saw 4 quadcopter drones with red and green lights in a tight diamond formation. So these things are flying in formation, according to the witnesses, over secure military installations like Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. But we can read all of this. And we can see those details. We can see what the witnesses are saying. You'll see that there were videos released too, and we'll get into that before anybody starts screaming about airplanes and analyses done. We'll get there. But you start to see that difference. Look at this. I used my car's spotlight system and placed the light on the quadcopters. When I illuminated the drones, it then lowered in altitude, gained altitude, and flew away at a rapid speed, and I lost sight of the drones. So these are really fascinating inside looks at what they were seeing through multiple nights at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Now, specifically, these were on 13 December 2024. There was also a second wave of sightings on the 16th of December. That's key. And if you look close enough, the media mostly reported roughly the 13th and 14th. The 16th came obviously a little bit later from the majority of the reporting. And that's also where all the videos came from. But the 13th is when they actually even closed the airspace of Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Now, I'm sorry, people make mistakes, but a Wright-Patterson Air Force size base is not going to shut down because they see a couple commercial airliners and a few people accidentally mistaken them for drones. That's just, I'm sorry, I just don't see it happen. And if that was going to happen, we would see it happen more often. So these were very specific incidents that caused on the 13th of December, the airspace to be shut down over Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. This particular witness talked about 3 additional UASs or drones flying in a diamond formation. So these things obviously were under intelligent control. I mean, again, don't read into that. But clearly flying in formation. There were multiple. I use the word swarm just because, you know, you've got these multiple witnesses talking about multiple drones on multiple occasions over the course of multiple nights. That's a huge issue. And in all of these testimonies, you can see exactly what those on the ground were seeing. And there were quite a few. I'm only showing you a couple so you can kind of get an idea. Here's another one where they saw 4 quadcopter drones with red and green lights. And in fact, that may be a repeat on the slide. I apologize. That might be a mistake there. It's live, so I can't cut that out. But regardless, there's a lot more. And so you'll be able to download all of these types of documents to see exactly what they saw, but also timeline breakdowns of what happened. And that's also key when you're trying to unravel this mystery. Is it drones? Is it commercial airplanes? So put a pin in this slide here where you have the timeline and all the timestamps and how it all kind of played out. So again, there was those events on the 13th, airspace closed on the night of the 13th. Now we've got incidents on the 16th. We've got multiple witnesses with multiple encounters with what they described as UASs, even here hovering in place over gate 26A, moving across the flight line. I'm sorry. I mean, do we really think that everybody is just mistaking a FedEx airliner that's 4, 5, 6,000 feet up, 10,000 feet up, and they somehow mistaken that for a drone? Maybe once, maybe twice, but all of this information was very fascinating to see. When I said that it was primarily the 13th and the 16th, if you look close enough, there was actually a report on the 11th of December talking about a patrolman in Area A who had relayed that there was a drone, an unmanned aerial vehicle flying above the tree line near the fire training area on Riverview Drive. So this had started, it seems, on the 11th, where they were seeing these UAVs. So very interesting look to see these documents, because most of the media, again, reported that 13th. It seems like that 13th was key because they shut the airspace down. But that's probably where a lot of it happened. But obviously the 16th, and then obviously documents revealed the 11th as well. Now, I said that there were videos as well. There were 7 of them, actually. As with these videos, as with UFO videos, there's always like 9 pixels, and you have to squint and turn on your head and close one eye. And then maybe you can kind of see something. And that was very true with these videos as well. So it was very unfortunate that the quality was so bad. But in the same respect, you have to understand, they're not there with television broadcast quality cameras. These that took those people that took the videos are stationed at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. There's obviously an issue here where they're seeing unmanned aerial, I keep getting tongue-tied there, but unmanned aerial vehicles in the air and seeing drones. So they're using their cell phones, pulling them out of their pocket, pointing them to the sky, and trying to get some type of intel for their superiors to look at. And so these videos, I think, were a product of that they weren't shooting a documentary, but rather they were trying to capture whatever these things were. Now, you can see here, too, with the documents, there were 7 videos, like I said. On the left-hand side, this particular one references 7 videos. Now, it says disc. Now, anybody who loves UFOs immediately went to disc-shaped objects. Is that what we're talking about? Well, I don't think so. I think that what this memo is saying is that they could not add 7 videos to this system called the Air Force Justice Information System. Now, I didn't put this in my written article for a couple different reasons, and that is I don't exactly know yet what it's trying to say, because obviously the videos were available, assuming that the 7 videos are the same that came from the 16th. So you can see the 16th December. And yes, all those videos were from the 16th. I'll show you proof of that in the next couple of slides. But why they couldn't be put into this system, I'm not aware of why, and I'm trying to find that out. But you can see here that there was another video. So let's just say the assumption is right, and that's what was released. There is another video from that night of the 11th. So what's interesting to me is the 11th was really never talked about. Then this report pops up, and there's a video of it. There's also an exclusion memo that they mysteriously can't add it for whatever reason. And then they didn't send it to me in the FOIA response. They also didn't say they omitted any videos either. So that's kind of a key part here. Where's this video? So I am also going after this video through appeal to say, hey, where is it? I need, this is clearly in existence because these 7 over here were released. Let me get my pen so I don't keep advancing here. So this side here, assuming that those are the 7 videos were released, there's one more. If I'm wrong with the assumption, then there's 8 videos and I need to know where they are. My guess is these are the 7 released because the date matches, and then we've got one more from the 11th, which we haven't seen yet. So now let's get into that analysis that I was talking about, because this also makes waves. Now, I'm going to say the same thing I did in my social media post that I'm going to say here. I have a lot of respect for Mick West. I don't agree with a lot of what he says, but I think his voice and his contributions are very, very valuable to this conversation. There are some things that I absolutely agree with, while a lot of times I don't. And of course, we sometimes get into some social media back and forth. But again, I stress that he's an important part of this conversation, because if he's wrong, then we can prove it. If he's not wrong and we can't prove it, then we should consider what he has to say. If we don't want to believe it, then fine, just don't listen to it. But regardless, I think that he's an important voice. In this particular instance, he had contacted me privately, and I'm glad he did, because I usually will post all of the videos, documents, everything in their raw format. And I struggled, just from a technical boring thing that I won't bore you with, but struggled getting the 7 videos embedded into my site. So I just kind of fell back on the standard YouTube embed, because it's very universal and it works. So I struggled there. And in the process of getting the article out, I forgot to add the zip file. And so he had contacted me and said, hey, can I get the originals? And then it dawned on me, hey, I forgot. So I said, okay, hold on. Added the zip, got him all the originals, which carries all of the metadata, which shows that every one of those videos is from the 16th, and every one had a timestamp. So what's nice about that is, remember I was talking about how the documents talked about the time, the timing of everything, kind of broke down that timetable. Now we can kind of put these visual elements in that timeline and see where they match up and what was going on. So at this point, Mick had done no analysis. He just wanted this information, and I was glad I could get it to him. I think, again, it doesn't matter if you agree with him or not. We should have all of this information out there, so those that have the capability to utilize that information have that at their fingertips. So I gladly got it to him and made sure that the website had that zip file, and was glad that that all worked out. Now, I don't talk about this software a lot on this channel. I think maybe it's worth having Mick on to talk about it, because this software that he created is super cool. I am not going to pretend to know exactly from a technical standpoint how he did this, but what he did was he was able, as long as you have the data points to put in and the regional locations and geographic points and so on, that you can import that data into here and essentially match up, let's say, a cell phone video with the time of day, location, and so on, and essentially integrate the data of flights of commercial airliners going over and matching up if you have certain things in there. He does the same with stars, satellites, space station movements, and so on. We talked about Chris Bledsoe briefly on the last stream that I did. That's a prime example that Mick, based on witness testimony and people posting their videos, he's able to get locations, time of day, direction, put that into what he calls Sitrec, and then match up. Hey, you saw this satellite go over. And you can see here where he's got kind of the 3 elements of the software here side by side. This was a video he posted online that essentially puts all that together and syncs it all up. I think that is super cool. That is something that we absolutely need in this space, because you can, given you have that information, put it into software, use third-party data like flight logs and flight paths and stuff like that, and plot it. Same with star movements and satellite flyovers and stuff like that. That is all crucial to the discussion in this space. So my kudos to him. If you haven't seen it, check it out. If you're a geek like me, you'll appreciate what he did there, because it is super cool. So what he did was he took all that metadata from the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base stuff and matched it up to what he says are flights that he can match. Now, I don't have any reason to doubt him. So I'm going to operate off the assumption that he's correct, that he was able to match up the 7 videos that came out to commercial airline flights. Okay. So don't kill me for that assumption, but for the sake of this conversation, I'm going to operate off of that because I'm not going to sit and try and go into the data and prove that whatever data sources he's using is wrong. There's not enough hours in the day. So I invite anybody else to do that. But operating off the assumption that he's correct, what exactly does that mean? Does that mean that the drone incursions at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in December 2024 were 100% all airplanes that were misidentified in the sky, and it climbed up the chain to the point where they shut down the airspace over Wright-Patterson Air Force Base? And on top of that, one thing we haven't mentioned here yet is the fact that they contacted the FAA, talked about the sightings that they were having, asking what authorized flights are in the area. According to the FAA, there were none. Are we to believe that they're that inept across the board, that you have all of that happening? Maybe the answer is yes. Some of you probably said it out loud as you're watching this. Yes, John, they are. You might be right. I'd like to think that that is not true. I hope that is not true. But regardless, I follow the evidence, okay? So despite what I just said and what I think, let's look at what the actual evidence is. And I go back to that timeline. Now, again, we know every video was from the 16th. So we can actually plug in, based on the timing, every one of those videos into the timeline here. Now, I had asked Mick privately, did you match up? He said he did one, and I was able to figure out which one he was referring to, but he says that he did not match up any others. So I looked to try and do it and could not match any of the timings except one. And what's interesting about that is there's a couple different things here. Why is that? So if we have to put up front what we know. And what we know is these videos came through the Freedom of Information Act on a request that looked for all information about the drone encounters at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in December of 2024. What we don't know is the context of why the videos are considered responsive to my request. They could absolutely be identified as commercial airlines to the United States Air Force. That those that took those 7 videos absolutely did mistake commercial airline flyovers for drones. They submitted it to their superiors. It wound up in this file. But those on the upper echelon of these investigations on that night said, no, that's okay. That's normal air traffic. But we've got a diamond formation over here. We've got 4 flying over there. We've got 1 hovering over the flight line over here. Are all of those commercial airlines? So what's important is, and I was trying to say that a couple times on social media, and I think when people were seeing Mick solve some of the videos, again, operating off the assumption he's right, they were ignoring a key part of the document where it said that they already figured out that some were authorized aircraft flying above Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. They even identified some as shooting stars that were produced by a meteor shower that night. So they had already done this investigation. Now, Mick brought this up. Again, we were kind of exchanging and having just a friendly back and forth behind the scenes. But he had brought up that this was about the 13th, not the 16th. So this potentially is not pertaining to the videos. And he's absolutely right. But my point is made even stronger now that we don't know the context of the videos. But I will point out one other thing in response to that. And that is, even though it says in relation to the 13th that some were considered authorized aircraft, you can actually see this is not a sworn testimony document. This one is an information report by a reporting officer but not signed off until January of 2025. Why that's key is because this absolutely could have been updated, and that's not malicious. They're just probably lumping together the events from December 11th to the 13th to the 16th, and then they referred it, you can see on the bottom here, to AFOSI for a full investigation on what in the hell was going on. Now, this sounds all like a moot point, but it's really important because what I was seeing was we don't know the answer. That's the bottom line. That's the truth. I'm not here to tell you if it was drones or aircraft. I don't have a dog in the fight either way. To be honest with you, I care only because I want to know the truth behind it, but I'm not hurt if it turns out to be airlines. But we have to figure out why so many failures piled up to get to that final product of so many misidentifications, shutting down a major Air Force base's airspace because of it. And all at the same time, the FAA is completely clueless and blind to what is flying over restricted airspace. That is a heck of a lot of really unlikely scenarios all piled on top of each other. So we have to know if that's true or if there really are drone incursions on these sensitive installations. And I feel it's the latter. But what interests me is why are so many people opposed to that idea? It's like they think if we're saying the D word, drone, that we're talking about aliens. And you're crazy if you're thinking that this is aliens. Don't they call that the straw man argument? So they start making fun of anybody who actually considers that these were drone incursions. And I posted it out there. And again, social media is really disgusting in some areas. But the same, select group of very loud people, went after me for saying, hey, remember those people that said all those drone sightings were commercial aircraft? And I posted part of the timeline talking about, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. I said, yeah, I remember that too. And just, essentially laughed about it. That had nothing to do with the videos. It has to do with the witness testimony, these drones flying in formation, quadcopters flying 500 feet off of a runway, hovering over a gate. All of this is in testimony that's submitted. And I think that they just go ahead and argue, well, a couple videos were explained, so that's case closed. And I don't understand, I truly don't, why people are so adamant about being... Let me rephrase it. I don't understand how people are so anti-investigation of something. Like, what's the big deal if these are drones? From a national security perspective, absolutely, that's a big deal. We got to deal with it. But they're just out there, I think, fighting to fight. They troll to troll. They attack to attack, just because that's their only contribution to this conversation. So it's really interesting for me because you kind of look from the outside in, you see all this information, and then they kind of pull that straw man in and go, see, it was all planes. It's like, well, no, that there's a lot here. What about the 13th? What about the missing video from the 11th? But they're so shallow-minded that they don't see past their own bias. And that's what's really unfortunate, because the reporting was there. The reporting was there in December. The war zone, which I speak highly about on this channel, and rightfully so, they got a great outfit over there. They do great work. This particular piece was December 15th, Howard Altman. They were right on top of it. So if you don't watch the war zone, definitely check them out. But Howard Altman did a great write-up on it. And he was getting statements around that time. The Air Force Base was admitting to the drone incursions. So why? So is this some massive conspiracy that these debunkers are saying, not only did all of those witnesses misidentify commercial airliners, they're all dumb. Not only is the FAA completely blind and dumb, but Wright-Patterson Air Force Base has concocted this entire story by saying, I can confirm, this is a base spokesman, I can confirm small aerial systems were spotted over Wright-Patterson between Friday night and Saturday morning. Today, leaders have determined that they did not impact base residents, facilities, or assets. The Air Force is taking all appropriate measures to safeguard our installations and residents. This was around, December 15th. Are you telling me this is all some huge conspiracy to give the illusion that drones were encroaching onto Wright-Patterson? That's what some of the debunkers want you to believe. And that to me is hilarious. Maybe I'm just weird in that respect, and don't answer that. I probably am, but that's ridiculous. All of the evidence is there, and yet a couple videos get identified, and that dismisses the whole thing. It's beyond me. I just don't get it, but it's pretty cool. Definitely go check out theblackvault.com. It's one of the recent stories, and you will be able to download all of the videos, all of the documents, read through them. I always invite you to do that because it gives you access to the raw information. So even though I love writing and love bringing that element to you where I can, again, look at 100 pages or 150 pages and kind of condense them down. I love doing that, but I also love giving you all the raw information as well. So that way you don't have to take my word for it. You can just kind of check it out for yourself. Let me take a couple live questions here. Again, if you are on YouTube, please, I see the super chats a little bit easier. If you, that's not a ploy to get your money. I apologize if it comes off that way. On my side, they're a lot easier to see. They get categorized. I can pull them. I'm the only guy at the Black Vault. It's just me. So I don't have, a team here helping me out. So super chats, I'm going to pull first. I will definitely try and see normal questions in the chat. Just put them all in caps. So I appreciate that. Sparky Pilot, thank you so much for your work, John. Throw this in the FOIA fund. I appreciate that, Sparky. Yes, 100% again goes directly into that, not into my pocket. All regular air traffic, no reason for media. Hey, if I understand your comment here that you feel that it was all regular air traffic, maybe that is. In my opinion, Nee, and thank you so much for supporting the channel. If I'm understanding you correctly, I think the evidence speaks to the contrary with all the documents, but I invite you to go take a look at it and definitely see for yourself. So moving on to one of the other stories. This particular one, you'll recognize the name. And this was about multiple, we're talking about drones again, but this kind of is leaning back towards the UAP stuff, that there were multiple drone incursions over the Pantex Nuclear Facility. New documents came out late last night, which was totally bizarre to me. Some of which had never been reported before. Now, Pantex, it's going to ring a bell for you if you pay attention to Jeremy Corbell and the Weaponized podcast and George Knapp. I believe it was on their TMZ special called UFO Revolution. And what was originally reported, and I want to make sure I kind of have this right, was a September 2015 drone encounter, which I don't want to sound, I don't want to sound aggressive the way that I'm going to say this here, or rude, but in the normal fashion of exaggeration, it was kind of blown up that this was one of those UFOs, the phenomena aspect of all of this kind of intertwined into this incident. And I didn't understand it based on their description. Why are you kind of building this up to something that it's not? Because UAV incursions over sensitive installations go back since the beginning of UAVs. Not only from a military standpoint, but those that you fly in your backyard. I remember years ago, I was looking for UFO related stuff, and it was through NCIS, so the Navy Criminal Investigation Service. These documents are on the Black Vault. I want to say it was probably 10, 12 years ago. I should have brought them up for this presentation, but again, these things can go on for hours and hours, so I try and condense it. But to tell you the story real quick, these documents came up of unidentified objects that were seen around base installations, but they were and they captured some of the UAVs, these little drones, and they were just commercial, drones that people were flying around too close, or sometimes in some cases over into the military base. And then sometimes they would actually crash them inside the base and then they would go out. It was crash retrieval. That's a headline you're probably going to see on a tabloid tomorrow. It was picking up these, hobby drones. But it came up as responsive to these requests because they were unidentified. In some cases, they couldn't track down who was actually operating them. Because, think about it. You fly that thing over, you're a hobbyist, you get it over and you crash it into something, you can't get it, it's behind a gate. What are you going to do? And you just hightail it out of there. So if I remember correctly, one of them was kind of just like that, where they felt that the person just kind of ran, while others, got cited and ticketed. But that was why it was a criminal investigation through the Navy. So my entire point is that those types of incursions are nothing new. Those documents have been out for years and years and years, and it's just a harsh reality to base security. People with a hobbyist drone, or even those with a little bit more of a nefarious intent and having a more expensive one, they can go out and do these types of things. So that's been a big concern. And you see a lot of, counter-proliferation tactics and stuff like that to kind of fight this problem. And it's an issue. So anyway, going back to the Pantex thing, I was really, I kind of confused why they were conflating it. But eventually documents came out, and in fact, they were profiled again on TMZ and through Jeremy Corbell and a FOIA researcher by the name of Dustin Slaughter, who was on season 2 of UFO Revolution. And they had gotten one of the photos of this thing, and it's pretty hard to tell what it is. It's worse than the videos from Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. I'll say that. And why that is because it was actually a product of a analysis that Sandia Labs did. And it was essentially just the layer of the drone. And it was just a kind of a blob of a picture. It wasn't even anything that you can discern. Now, I'm not diminishing the FOIA find. That stuff's awesome to me. But again, it's kind of that buildup and the misrepresentation of what may have really happened there, which was just kind of a normal drone going through. They caught it on camera. That's key. And they did analysis of it. And then the screen grab from the video surfaces, I think it was January of this year. Also, some of the documents came out. Now, here's what's strange, right? So now that's a little bit of backstory of where the Pantex connection comes in. But it all surrounded that September 2015, September 1 to be exact, encounter of what they described as an unknown object flying in a non-threatening manner west of Pantex facilities in a northerly trajectory. And it goes on. I won't sit and read the whole thing to you, but again, these documents are now online. I invite you to do so. But at 8:30 p.m. last night Pacific time, the NNSA, so that's the was it National Nuclear Security Agency, NNSA, gave a FOIA response. So 8:30 p.m. Pacific on a Friday night. That's really bizarre. And I believe their specific location is New Mexico. So you're probably talking about, man, I forget exactly what time zone their city would be in, but either 9:30 or 10:30. But you're talking about very late on a Friday night. I get this document dump of these records. Now, the backstory for me is that it goes back to, I may harp on certain people, Jeremy Corbell included, on how he hypes these stories. But I don't let that get in the way of, hey, what can we find? And so I had filed in January of 2024 to get these records, but I didn't specify just the September 2015 incident. Reason being is I wanted to branch out, so I cast a wider net. So the other FOIA requester, so Mr. Dustin Slaughter, I don't know. I tried to talk to him, and I'll show you kind of the tweet later. For whatever reason, he doesn't want to chat with me, probably because I'm critical of Jeremy Corbell, and they're best buds, it sounds like. So I guess he just didn't want to talk to me, so that's fine. So I was trying to piece together, what did he ask for when he got this particular image? Because what you're seeing on the screen is what he got. And then the document dump last night lifted a bunch of the redactions and gave a lot more. So over here is what came last night. Over here is what he published, I believe, in January. So again, I wish, I wish there was a team effort element to some of this, but some people are very territorial, which is unfortunate. I love to learn. I love to talk about this stuff, but I love to listen too. I definitely don't have all the answers. So I'd love to know like how people do things. We can, God forbid, work together and maybe achieve something. So I was kind of trying to piece together what this was. The only thing I could think of is this is what he got from asking for the September 2015 encounter. But these redactions, B3, UCNI. Now, UCNI is probably an acronym you don't see a lot. It's unclassified nuclear information. So what it's essentially, it's unclassified, but they still protect it under FOIA exemption B3 because it's related to nuclear information. And so that is something, and the full acronym, if I misspoke there, unclassified controlled nuclear information. And that's UCNI. So that's what came, what it sounds like just 6 months ago. But yet my release last night lifted the majority of those redactions, and it was B7 in just a few areas. Here's another page. This one, I assume, I don't know why he cut it off, but this is the same page. You can see all that information is now revealed. Here it is not. Why? Your guess is as good as mine, but it was pretty interesting that now we have a lot of this information out. So I published this last night. I think I was going cross-eyed, like trying to get everything on because you generally start at 4 a.m. with my normal day job. So I think it was like 10:30, 10:45, but that's way past my bedtime. I don't care if I sound old saying that. I mean, I'm up at 4 anyway. And so that's a long day. So I'm just going cross-eyed trying to get these documents out. But I thought, look, if they're going to dump them at 8:30 on a Friday night, there's a reason why. So let's get them out to the general public and get some eyeballs on this. That's another page. So a lot more came out about that September 2015 drone encounter. And you can kind of see that there wasn't really anything anomalous about it. I know some people kind of instantly think, well, how do we know it's real? I mean, look, if you're going to start talking about how things are fabricated and documents and narratives are fabricated, you're going to have to prove that. Why I say that is secrecy is a gigantic problem, but it's also a necessity. And so why I say it that way is that they overclassify a ton of stuff that you'll never see. They don't have to create narratives and go to the trouble of creating documents and all of that stuff. It's a silly extra step that they don't need to do. The ability for them to redact everything and keep it under lock and key is already there for them. So they don't need to fabricate. Will they? Sure. I mean, that's a possibility. And I ask myself that every day when documents come. So I don't dismiss it, but you have to understand if you're going to make that claim, you got to prove it. So I don't see anything anomalous here, but hey, it's fun that we have access to it now. That's awesome. But also in the drop last night was that September 2015 encounter wasn't the only one, that there were actually multiple drone incursions at Pantex over the years. That you can see here was October 5th, 2022 was another one. So about 7 years later that you can see UASs were encroaching in and again, just looking like they're surveilling the property. I mean, we can all try and take a guess. Nothing real anomalous, descriptions including very similar to what we were hearing about at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in 2024, 4 rotors, no distinguishing marks, those kind of details. So again, a lot less anomalous, nothing we should really build up as some kind of phenomenon that we need to make a documentary about, but it's all interesting information. There was another one from June 25, 2023. Same deal, 200 feet drone that was seen 200 feet high. And you can, again, read all of the witness testimony with these documents. Sadly, no additional videos or footage. However, there was a video that was connected to that September 2015 one. That's intriguing. That video has never been out before. And also that analysis we now have a bigger picture of what they did, pardon the pun, but rather I'm talking about a textual picture of the fact that Sandia Labs was doing the analysis on behalf of Pantex, trying to figure out what this object was, and that they make specific reference to a video. I filed an appeal for that. I also filed directly with Sandia a different case to go after it on two different fronts. That's kind of a safety net for me. I do that primarily because one may come in before the other, or one may not work, but the other does. So one is through, obviously, the Pantex facility operator. It's like a LLC. I forget their full name, but they adhere to the Freedom of Information Act, but they obviously process the Pantex side. To where the Sandia Lab side is through NNSA directly, and then likely Sandia has their own team. So you're talking about two different FOIA offices. The one over at the Pantex facility, they may say Sandia has to do it, and Sandia may say Pantex has to do it. So that's a trick of mine that I pass on to you. File both. The worst they can say is, hey, you got to go that way. And okay, then you go that way. But for me, I go both ways first. That way I don't have to deal with it later, because sometimes you will wait 3, 4, 5, 6 months for something to come in. So those are the new documents. Let me take a break, switch back here. All right. 5x5 news. John, your work is truly appreciated. If you need unredacted versions of the Susan Gough emails for clarity, let me know. Best regards, Mike Turber. Hey, Mike, I appreciate your support of the channel and your comment there. Yeah, I believe that you're probably talking about some of the Susan Gough emails that came up that included Jack Sarfati's list. I get CC'd on a lot of that. In fact, their lists have become so excessive with volume. I mean, I rarely actually check one of my addresses now, just because of that, just because there's so many emails. So I appreciate the offer, but I don't, there's too much. I mean, if there was some kind of official correspondence from the government side, I'd be a little bit more interested if I didn't have those. But yeah, I appreciate it. I've seen a lot of them, and they're just mailing lists. But do appreciate that support of the channel. Truly, truly appreciate it. Jay Feller, thank you. Hashtag FOIA. Thank you for that support. Yes, hashtag FOIA all the way. Huge advocate for that. Nee, good to see you again. To elaborate, I think it was an incursion in airspace from whoever, but then flooded with friendly drones as a cover-up. So nothing to see, all good. Okay. Well, I appreciate that feedback. Yeah, there's a lot of speculation on what happens. And that will, if I can just say this one last point, because I know we kind of moved on from the drones story. But that being said, when you trying to find the best way to say it. Tell you what, I'll put a pin in it. I'll come back to it, Nee. I appreciate your feedback there, but I may deal with it later on one of the other slides. So let me hold that thought. But I do appreciate the, that extra feedback. And in fact, I will say it at this point. I think that the biggest point that I want to make about those drone sightings at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and yes, I call them drones. I think the evidence is there. We don't have all the pieces of the puzzle. And although I touched on it earlier already, I'm going to touch on it again. There are too many people without having all the pieces of the puzzle trying to claim that they have the entire picture. And that is the most unhealthy thing that you can do on any topic. And this is one of those instances. So I appreciate your speculation. I think that I'm reading it correctly. And although I may respectfully disagree with it, regardless, it's the only thing I can do too, because we don't have all the pieces of the puzzle. So where I kind of was, second guessing, do I really want to go here? Just be careful with who you listen to. And I see it more and more every day that it's the mindset of if it explains one, it explains all. And that's not true. But to some, they give that impression. If it explains one thing, then it explains all things. And I think that even Mick had the opposite phrasing, which I think was great. I don't know what the root is, but I think Mick said it once and it stuck with me. The reality is an explanation for one thing is not an explanation for all things. That's the right way to look at it. So I remember Mick saying that, so I'm going to credit him here. But if it was somebody else, I'm sorry. Whoever said it, kudos to them. But that mentality of the complete opposite has become a growing issue. And so I was just trying to find the respectful way to say it, because I do get incredibly frustrated by people that do that. And I truly believe at the end of the day, they think that they're like doing good, that they're out there being trolls on X and attacking people with beliefs other than their own. They, it borderline dox people because they have fringe beliefs, and they have to profile them and they have to reveal who they are and talk about their LinkedIn and essentially force them off their respective social media channels because they are trying to profile anything and everything they can to make the topic and the discussion look bad. And those are the types of things, in my opinion, more from the simple-minded people in this conversation, that they already have their mind made up. They can never grow beyond that decision they've already made on what all things are, because their explanation for one is an explanation for all. And so that's what they do. So they are just completely on a one-way track of, well, I'm just going to attack everybody. I'm going to be a jerk to everybody because that's all I have to offer. And how dare they think differently than me? And that insecurity that those people have is again, a growing issue because their voices are not quiet. They're loud. Some of them even have a platform where they can reach those audiences, and they're completely, in my opinion, malicious in their intent. They may not even realize it, but the maliciousness comes from that narrow-mindedness, and it has jaded them so much that they attack on a personal level somebody who has different beliefs than them and attacks the crosses on their wall or will attack their religious beliefs, all because they have an insecurity about something. And I think that those types of things, albeit uncomfortable, have to be said. I may not agree with certain people. I may talk about formerly taxpayer-paid individuals that did something on taxpayer dime because I'm a taxpayer and that's what I do. I'm an advocate for transparency and I look into it. It's not personal, but rather it's about accuracy. It's about looking into what taxpayer money went to. There is a line, however, on the personal side of it. And you have to skate it very, very carefully, because sometimes when you're looking into those people and you do find some mistruths out there and them changing the facts to their own reality, it becomes very sensitive. People get fired up. But for me, I try and keep it not personal. Others do the quite the opposite. And it's gross. I mean, if those are the types of human beings they are, that's cool. But we have to start having those conversations. Why is it that there are certain people that even openly admit, hey, I work for the DOD, that are on X all day long attacking others? Hey, I've got my, and you, some of you who use social media probably saw some of these exchanges, but I mean, it went back and forth all day. And I thought, wait a minute, you're openly saying you work for the DOD. Is that what taxpayer dollars are paying you for, to sit on X and attack David Grusch? Like, look, I question those types of things too, but you don't see me on X all day questioning David Grusch. I mean, I'll have a comment here or there. It's because it's newsworthy, but every day, like during normal business hours, is Uncle Sam paying for that? So I'm not on those, like, you're working for the government and it's a big psyop and that's what your job is. I'm not on that bandwagon, but it sure does make you think, like, do you guys have a job that you actually do work at? Or is, like, literally trashing Brandon Fugel and Travis Taylor and David Grusch and Luis Elizondo, is that really what you think about all day? And that's coming from a critic of some of those names, some, not all, of the names that I just said, as somebody who led the charge on questioning some of those stories. And even I sit back and go, dude, you have got a weird obsession, but it's gotten worse. So thank you for letting me go off on that little tangent, but I think it needs to be said. It's an important part of this conversation that people are out there thinking that is the best contribution that they have. And it's sad. It really is. All right, let me go to another story here and switch back because I'm sure getting probably slaughtered in the chat channel by people. All right. Let me see if there's any questions I can pull. I appreciate that. Love your show for the facts. Truly appreciate it. Hypersonic, I deleted my X account because it's a shit show. Look, absolutely. It really is. It's not for the faint of heart. If you are a sensitive person, and I'm not harping on you if you are, I am. I get offended. It's awful, some of the things people say on there. X isn't for you. I mean, it's ugly. But that's seemingly where all of like the cesspool of trolls congregate. There's a lot of great people there too. So don't let me say it's just completely not worth your time. It is. But you just have to get used to the fact that that's who they are. Like that's where they go, and that's all they have. And that's what is truly kind of sad about it. All right, so let me switch back away from the chat now. Navy withheld nearly 500 pages about UAP videos, about their UAP video release decision. Records show FOIA pressure drove disclosure. Disclosure in the sense of FOIA. I know it in UFO talk has a little bit of a different meaning, but disclosure is like a FOIA disclosure. This is specifically about the FLIR, the Gimbal, and the GoFast video. And as we know, I have followed that for years, from 2017 to date. And I have pushed on those angles a lot because I am fascinated by it. I've looked at document and information leaks for decades, not just with UFO stuff, but rather, again, it's that national security angle that I research a lot, and look at what happens to people who do get into releasing information in an unauthorized manner, taking classified information and putting it out in the open. Even unclassified information for official use only was put on Discord. You know, this was like a year ago, whatever it was. And you look at how the DoD reacts to that. And there's press releases, and we're getting to the bottom of this, and we'll figure out who did it. And it's a big deal. UFO stuff leaks, and it's like, no big deal. And I've long been intrigued by that. And now, although I was very much raked over the coals for saying it for so long, it's now been beyond a shadow of a doubt proven that the FLIR, the Gimbal, and the GoFast were all leaks. That whole, it was reviewed for declassification by the U.S. military, all of that was made up. It was just a story. Like none of it was true. So now we have all the proof that we need. And even Christopher Mellon years ago conceded that people bent the rules to get these things out, and that somebody handed these videos to him in the Pentagon parking lot. Now, even though he never said who that was, pretty sure most of us can guess who that was, but regardless, they were leaks. So I've long pushed on, well, why is it that the DoD just seemingly doesn't care about these particular leaks? Now, we do know that AFOSI did investigate the leaks, specifically with the FLIR, because that was the first one that actually leaked years prior. It showed up, I believe, on the Above Top Secret forum first, linked to some German server. It was hosted in Germany. And it's a very interesting kind of side story, which I won't get into today, but very interesting side story that shows that they did look into at least the FLIR at the time, and there were just too many, essentially, sailors on board that could have got their hands on it. So, in other words, too many suspects. They couldn't round it down. They did determine it was unclassified, so who cares? When AFOSI looked at all three going in the open, although the names were redacted, it was pretty easy to figure out that Luis Elizondo, where his name kind of fit in, and that it essentially was was not authorized for release, and that although he wasn't punished, it was still bad. And during that investigation, they discovered that the Navy, who authorized only for use internally at the DoD, because that was a key part of what Luis Elizondo wrote, they determined that if they ever knew that it was going to the media or anywhere outside the walls of the Pentagon, so to speak, that they would have denied the request. So it was clear as day that all of this was not supposed to be out in the open. And the entire narrative that people were saying for years was completely bunk. Now, to this story with the 500 pages withheld and why it's interesting. I'm sorry, my earpiece keeps falling out. I started going after the documents of what led to the eventual addition of the 3 videos to the online Navy site. Now, to some of you, that might be boring. It's like, well, who cares? They added it to the Navy site. We've got access to it. You know, who cares? We even saw them before, so is it really anything new? What's key is figuring out why and how it happened, at least for me, because then that tells you the inside look on what they were thinking about these videos. And over the years, various FOIA requests have touched that, but this particular case was specific to the Navy's decision of adding the FLIR, the Gimbal, and GoFast to their online FOIA reading room. They claimed with a press release, and it was even published in the mainstream media, like Forbes did a story on this, that it was a byproduct of essentially their transparency. I quoted it in my article exact. I'm paraphrasing now, but essentially they were giving this aura that, oh, we're proactively releasing this, even though Greenwald had a case for it, and I'm sure other people too. But they did this press release. They made it seem like they were being proactive and transparent. And then literally like within a couple hours, the case that had gone on, I forget exactly how long, it was like a year or two, got answered. And then I got the videos as well. So this isn't this case. Again, this is the previous one. So it was a really bizarre chain of events because normally FOIA releases are just that, FOIA releases. They're not accompanied by press releases and any type of show of transparency, but rather it's a FOIA release. This one was quite different. So previous cases would sometimes get an email here or there that was making reference to this decision, and you could see it actually stemmed from the argument that I had put up that they should not and could not conceal these videos based on public statements that the U.S. Navy gave me directly. And so I put up a legal argument that said, you know, it was what I call a preemptive appeal. That's not an official term, but essentially I was kind of appealing it in my letter and essentially said, you know, here's the reasons why these should be responsive. Now, you may ask the question, why does it really matter? You already saw the video, so why are you fighting for them? Keep in mind, there was a lot of talk about at least the Gimbal having a larger version of it within the United States Navy's archives. So what I was going for was everything. It turned out that it was to the second of what had already leaked, that was the only thing that existed, or so they claimed. But regardless, that's what came out. Well, I filed an additional case after all that to go after all of the records. And this one took years to get. And it was all the records that pertained to the release of those videos. You would think them being unclassified, them not revealing much of anything that hasn't been out already in the open, that they would just kind of show you that inside baseball, minus the privacy stuff and maybe minus, you know, whatever technical system or classified system or whatever, you know, might come that way. Sure, that could be redacted, but you'd think they show you. On the contrary, they actually denied almost 500 pages of that material that was all about them declassifying those videos. And I say declassified loosely, they were unclassified, but reviewing them for release. 500 pages. What is there to talk about? Now, you can probably say quite a few of those are repeats. You can probably say quite a few of those, you know, are just boring administrative stuff. Sure. But 500 pages and exempted from top to bottom? That's ridiculous. Now, I did get quite a few pages released. I did publish all of those. You can download all of those as well. So those do exist, and those are online, and those are ready to go. But 500 pages were withheld. Some of the exemptions that they used included, and they bolded it, deliberative process privilege, which in the FOIA realm, that's what I refer to. And I didn't coin this phrase, but those that are in the FOIA arena say the exempted if you want to statute, and attorney-client privilege. So they obviously had a bunch of lawyers involved that were looking at all this stuff. Why? You look at those videos. Are they really that impressive? So these are the types of pieces of the puzzle that, again, may seem boring to some, but to me, it tells a bigger story. That those kind of grainy videos that, albeit were interesting for a bit, and now it's just kind of snoozy. We see them all the time. But the FLIR, the Gimbal, and the GoFast, all of that went into just putting those that had already been in the public domain. It turns out 100% of what they had was already in the public domain. 500 pages. That's insanity to me. But it is incredibly telling, because then you start looking at all those other cases that talk about FOIA, the FOIA cases that talk about UAP photos and UAP videos that are entirely exempted because they are classified. And I have cases with the United States Air Force and the U.S. Navy that proves that they just will not release anything. What are those looking like? Because if all of that deliberative process privilege, attorney-client privilege went into some grainy videos that were unclassified and that had already been online for years, what's in this other stuff? Now, that doesn't mean aliens, okay? Before those certain people attack me for making a big deal out of it. But it is a big deal because it shows you the lengths that they have to go to hide these things, and the lengths that they go to when they finally come out in the open. And if those grainy videos produce this, I want to know what they're hiding. Now, the last story I'm going to deal with, let me switch over, see if there's anything else here. Sorry, these are already... Okay, Gandalf. Gandalf, I just watched The Lord of the Rings, all 3 movies with my 11-year-old son. And I was so excited that he loved it. It's one of my favorite of all movies. So love your name. Thanks, JG. What do you make of Wall Street Journal's lack of response/rebuttal to the extreme criticism? Is there a hidden message behind their dialing up the absurdity to 11? Look, if you haven't seen it, I did a video on this channel all about that Wall Street Journal article. You may have seen it, which is kind of maybe prompting your question here. But for those who are watching that have not, go to the YouTube channel. If you don't know how to get there, it's theblackvault.com/live. I know this is being broadcast on X. It's being broadcast on Facebook. So if you're not subscribed to the YouTube channel, definitely go check it out. But that being said, I'm not surprised that they're not responding to it. In my opinion, they look foolish. And I think that's why part 2 came out on the night that it did. There was a major world event, and it was like, okay, let's just get this out. You know, it was done in the can, but get it out. And they did so, unlike it just essentially got buried, and rightfully so. I mean, it was kind of a joke. So what do I think about their lack of response? It doesn't surprise me. The mainstream media is wrong all the time when it comes to not only UAP issues, but a ton of other ones. Do they really care about their corrections? I refuse to pay for a subscription to Wall Street Journal. They obviously have a fat paywall on the article if you want to go read it. I use that archive.is that allows you to bypass those paywalls. And I invite you all to do it too, because it's not worth paying for. And it's kind of ludicrous that they feel that they can charge for it, because it is wrong. Now, why I bring that up is I don't know if they have since posted a correction. I'm guessing if they did, I would have heard about it, through social media channels and stuff like that, because usually that kind of stuff would bounce around quite a bit. I haven't heard anything. So if any of you have your subscription to Wall Street Journal, consider canceling it. But then on top of that, before you do, look to see if there is a correction posted, because I'm curious if they ever did. I think that there were a couple correction-worthy aspects to it. But be that as it may, I mean, you can argue that into the ground. What I will say comfortably is that it was completely misleading, and the fact that they didn't comment or respond to the rebuttals doesn't surprise me one bit, because they don't care. And that's not just the Wall Street Journal. I think a lot of outlets don't care about these types of stories. And people are hired to go in. They're freelance journalists. They get their money for doing, X amount of stories or per story. And they go in and they do it, and then they just move on to the next one. And they don't care what Joe Blow from the UFO community has to say, or what Blogger X has to say, or what John Greenwald has to say. They don't care. They got their money and they move on. And then they're writing about Iran or Pakistan or Russia or whatever on their next one. Who knows? But yeah, bottom line is they just don't care. All right, let me see here. Getting through. ND Cody, could the cover up be they don't want you, they don't know what this stuff is either? Always appreciate your efforts. That's a great comment. And, I remember years ago, I was interviewed by George Norrie, and it was a show that he did. I think he still does it, actually, on Gaia. And it was, I really like George. I've George Norrie and I've known each other for many, many years. I mean, we don't talk every day, but I mean, we've obviously have corresponded quite a bit over the years. I've been on Coast quite a few times, and I had a great time at this interview. And I remember it came up, and I floated the idea around this time, and I can't believe the amount of hate mail that I got for it. And I said something to the effect of, the cover-up may absolutely be the fact that they just are clueless as we are, meaning we just don't have all the answers. The amount of vitriol that came from the audience on that show was something that I'll never forget. So whenever this comes up, I always instantly go back. Let me just state for the record, it had nothing to do with George Norrie. He was a very gracious host and did not say anything negative whatsoever to my viewpoint. But again, the hate mail definitely was excessive after that. So I think you nailed it. I think that that's a huge possibility. I wouldn't bet my house on it. I don't know. But yeah, I believe that there's an aspect of this that they don't know. And that is a national security risk. Plain and simple. That could absolutely play a role in them not wanting to get into any of this with any of us. Because if they did, then they would reveal that weakness. And they can't do it. So I think a lot of people want, just to close that thought, they want the government to be all-knowing. They're evil, they cover everything up, and they're lying. But like there's some kind of powerhouse, all-knowing entity that knows everything and runs the world and controls information and this and that. And giving them too much credit, if that's your mindset. Because I think it's a huge possibility that they're clueless, that they may have an idea that there's something there that they just can't combat, but they can't figure it out. And whether that be Russia, Iran, China, whatever, aliens, fill in the blank, that's not where I'm going with this. The point remains, no matter what variable you put in there, the point is the same. The concern, that national security risk, is the issue. And I think that's a big possibility. So, yeah, I think you nailed it. I love your thinking. It's a pleasure to see your comment. All right, so let me kind of switch back here. If you do have, I want to pull from the regular chat too. So if you are in, it looks like there's between all the networks, almost 1,900 people watching live right now. So thank you guys for doing that. YouTube and Facebook and X, your comments will come in on my screen, but they do go fast. So put them in all caps if you have just a standard question. The super chats, if you're on YouTube, they do get put to a different window. I'm able to see those a little bit easier. But again, I will pull from that chat the most that I can. Back to the last story that I'm going to talk about. Now, this is based on, as I said in the beginning of the show, based on some of your questions and then your kind of request that I do this video. And I thought today was going to be a great day to do it because it kind of fits into something I talked about earlier, same FOIA requester, but also about the overall scope of transparency and essentially how is the government changing, if at all, with the transparency when it comes to the UAP issue. Now, I've talked about the exaggeration and the fabrication when it comes to some of these stories and how it's very hurtful to the conversation. And this is actually an example, I believe, of just that. Now, as I said earlier, I'll say it again here. I decided not to do the video because of the fact that for whatever reason, the FOIA requester, who I will praise right now, who deserves credit for this, I am excited to see other people use FOIA, and anybody who knows me, not only on a personal level, but just if you watch this channel, I am constantly giving FOIA tips, advice, and sidebars because I advocate for other people to use FOIA. So I will, again, absolutely compliment that effort. But what needs to be dealt with is how the result was skewed, which created very much a false impression because of the platform that this ended up on. Now, you all know, or at least you may not know the full backstory, but the Mosul Orb was something that came out from Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp. They, quite a few years ago, had quite a few UAP leaks. And on this channel, and I'll say it again, that was an era I was really intrigued by Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp. To me, it was clear at that time that they had connections within that were giving them interesting stuff. And I paid attention. I still pay attention. I'm not going to lie and say, oh, I don't even care. I very much care. But my viewpoint of them is very different now. And I believe that there is enough embellishment that we have to question what are their motives. That's not me talking bad about the two guys. I'm sure they're great guys. In fact, I knew George Knapp for years. I feel that it's not the same anymore, but that maybe that's just me. But we have to question why, like when you look at the 29 Palms case and the, in my opinion, intentional omission of information that could have helped us solve that case in an hour. And yet that was absolutely intentionally withheld from you. And there are other cases that I can go into, but that being a prime example, because I was actually very much connected to that whole story. And in fact, Jeremy Corbell played into a conspiracy that I was fed information by the government. This allegation was made by then a growing number of people, that because I was able to find the FLIR photos and videos so fast, which I'm sorry, I mean, I've used government archives for a long time. That's not patting myself on the back. That's just because I'm used to it. Like I can find information. I didn't need FOIA to do it. It's just, you need to know how to use it. And it's as simple as searching, which is difficult for some. So, hey, I don't hold it against you. But the conspiracy was the fact that I was able to come up with it so quickly that I was working with the DOD, and that information was fed to me to discredit this massive flying triangle going over 29 Palms. All of that is ludicrous. All of that is generally from, X, at the time, Twitter nobodies. But for Jeremy Corbell to play into that and comment on it, those types of things are ridiculous and very hurtful to the conversation. To me, I couldn't care less at this point. I've been accused of being an agent for a long time. I don't really care. My paycheck comes from my hard work on a business I built selling headphones. So that's what I do for a living. Whoever wants to say anything else about what I do, that's on them. But my whole point with this is, what is their intention? When you play into those types of conspiracies, when you are, in my opinion, maliciously holding back information from your readers and viewers so you can essentially have a viewpoint that is not accurate, but it's more popular. That to me is problematic. So when the Mosul Orb thing came out, again, this was that era I was very interested in. The Baghdad Phantom was another one. There was a couple leaks there that were very interesting to me. This was one. So in the last 2 weeks, story broke that the Mosul Orb video was released through the Freedom of Information Act, and the government was sued in order to get this out. Now, that to me is awesome. Like, hey, praise from top to bottom. Now, like, no negative here. So I am not poo-pooing that at all. That is very, very cool. Let me show you the video here. Hopefully I can play it. If I can. Can I? Give me 1 second. It should play. I can draw on the screen. I don't want to draw on the screen. Bear with me here. Oh, I can zoom in on the screen. I don't want to zoom in. Hold on. I don't know what's going on. There we go. That's it. They called it a 4-second video. It's actually 23 frames total of the UFO. So that's not even a full second. It's about 30 frames per second. Depending upon how you view it, people may come up with a frame or two short if you do drop frames, stuff like that. Regardless, second 08 to 205, that's what the Mosul Orb was. That's it. That's the extent of it. Still very cool. Still an awesome FOIA find. So cool of a story. But that's what we're talking about. Now, this hits the internet, and the buildup to these 23 frames of video was intense. Like, I thought, because we didn't know exactly what was going on with the Mosul Orb, we just knew it was coming back. I was expecting like a 12-minute close-up, you can see the writing on the side version of this. And why I was so excited was because this was the one video in 2023 that I had determined was likely classified. Despite what people were saying, I got a lot of heat for saying it, but it turns out it was a classified video, that this was something that was denied through FOIA in 2023. So when this resurfaced and the way that it was built up, I'm super intrigued and excited. It doesn't matter the source. If it's provable, that's super cool to me. So I was excited to see it. The question I had, though, was what exactly changed? So 2023 classified, fully exempt from release. I appealed and lost the appeal. Now I'm told that litigation brought it out. Again, super cool, but I couldn't get any details. Watched the video, and it was weird. It was like there were some details, but the case didn't go after the Mosul Orb video. It came from a Justice Department attorney, and it was kind of like sent out of the blue during the process of this appeal. None of which sounds right to me. Still very cool, but I really wanted to get the answer because it was like, well, wait a minute, what has changed? Is this a new era of transparency? Because we know that Arrow is putting out videos even along the same lines as the Mosul Orb. So what they label as Middle East object, they consider it unidentified. It is much longer than the Mosul Orb, and they've put this out, and again, say it's unidentified. That's their official designator, and that's key. So put a pin in that. Official designator is very important here. And they see this, object flying through, and you watch it for a little bit. So they're putting out videos like this before, and here, let me kind of show it to you now that I can figure out how to press play on this thing. It's not long, but this one as well. This was officially released by Arrow, and they say it's unidentified. You can see it gets tracked. You can see, I'm going to keep my pointer off the video just because I don't want to block it so you guys can see that. But again, they're releasing these things. So I'm thinking, great, this may be a way that this litigation opened up the floodgates. And the buildup was extraordinary. The Freedom of Information Act is fundamentally broken. And I think journalist Dustin Slaughter just single-handedly fixed that. Fixing Chapter 5, United States Code, Section 552, all with a UFO request. That is extraordinary. So I'm like, okay, what are we about to see here with their 4-second clip? That's, I'll move on. Your mind is about to be blown, he says. Put on your UFO battle helmets, y'all. This UFO revolution is about to be televised like right now. I don't know what we're going to see. Now they've at least said a 4-second video. I was hoping for 12 minutes, but I'm like, wow, this must be the most extraordinary 4 seconds ever. And it didn't stop. I mean, the extraordinary element of all of this was palpable with these social media posts. It kept going. This moment sets a historical precedent, not only for government transparency, but for investigative journalism itself. What Dust and Slaughter achieve proves journalists can penetrate even the most fortified walls of secrecy. This is a watershed for the field, where journalists and the public can force accountability, demand answers, and reshape the future of UAP research. From this point forward, silence is complicity. Why I'm highlighting this is this completely damages Dustin Slaughter's win. Because what he did absolutely deserves praise. Period. There's nothing to add to that. It deserves praise. When you cheapen it and just blow this out to like he invented sliced bread, it absolutely cheapens it and damages it. Because, and this is why I decided to go ahead and do this, many of the comments that I saw believed that this case fundamentally changed FOIA. Now, I'm not laughing because of Dustin's work. I'm laughing at the claim. Litigation is nothing new. In fact, there are stacks of FOIA litigation cases every year. So that part didn't stick out. But what I was super intrigued by, and I really wanted to get the answer to, was what changed? How did you do it? Let's share. Aren't we all advocates for transparency? What argument did you say to get out classified information that was classified, but get it declassified and released? And that was super intriguing to me. And I reached out. I wanted to do a story on it. I wanted to do a video, reached out. I emailed, direct messaged. I even tracked down Dustin Slaughter's attorney. I sent him a nice note, congratulated for the win. Just said, hey, I've got a question or two about the process. I'd love to profile it for you guys. Full credit to all of you. Can I ask you a question? Ignored across the board. Nobody owes me anything, so let me stress that. I'm a nobody. I get it. Like, so please, I'm stressing that before I can see the comments by my haters now. Well, they don't owe you anything. You're absolutely right. But in the interest of accuracy, I needed to try. I wanted to try because it was important to spotlight. There's been quite a few FOIA people that I've highlighted on this channel and in written articles, and I wanted to add Dustin to the list. So ignored across the board, but I'm like, what justifies these comments? I'd love to know how FOIA has been fundamentally changed. And then I got this weird tweet. Hey, John, sorry I missed your earlier post regarding how I know the object to be unidentified. The object in question is unidentified because the original FOIA request sought records of unidentified objects. Thanks and take care. So that was pretty obvious of what one of my questions was, because I wasn't getting responses privately, but they were saying that the Mosul Orb was unidentified, that was the official designator for it. That is actually really important. That's an important distinction. You're saying that in the eyes of the DOD, they said it's unidentified. Cool. Where? Did Arrow say it? Did the FOIA letter say it? Did a statement say it? Did it have a tag on the video? Like, what was this being based on? And when I wanted to do the article on it, it's an important find. And yeah, if it came out that this was still unidentified, that is a cool element to highlight. So now I'm being told, well, the FOIA request said UFO, so this has to be a UFO. That is not true. So let me just kind of put that out there. That's not Dustin's fault. I'm not attacking him for it. It's just fundamentally not true. He can check with his attorney there. And the reason I say that is because somebody can take a picture of a watermelon that they threw in the air, call it a UFO, tag it as a UFO, submit it to Arrow. Arrow goes, you idiot, that's a watermelon. depending upon how you write your FOIA request, you can actually get that video of the watermelon. They're not going to tell you, hey, by the way, there's a watermelon. Hey, by the way, we determined this was a watermelon. No, FOIA doesn't, that they don't answer questions. They don't have to. You get the responsive records. So depending upon how you word the request, all important factors in accuracy here, you can come up with, now obviously the watermelon video is a stupid, silly example, but I'm trying to prove the point here that it depends on how you word the request. So, hey, let's go back a little bit when I was talking about the drone videos. They came up because my requests were about drones. But what if they determined they were commercial airliners? Would they still come up? The answer is yes, they would be. So they're not drones. So let's just say, Mick West, assuming is true, is right, they would still come up. So it would not be accurate for me to turn around and go, I don't care what your data says, Mick. My FOIA says drone, so it's a drone, and then just dismiss it. That's not how it works in the eyes of the FOIA. So something was really off with all of this, and you'll kind of see, and why I decided to do this was to explain a little bit more that sadly FOIA hasn't fundamentally changed, so don't get your hopes up. So spoiler alert on that one. But also it was very interesting to see how this was kind of relayed to the general public, but it really didn't talk about what the case was even about, because they made it seem like the secrecy was actually being battled through litigation, and that was fundamentally changing. The secrecy wasn't even an issue. And that's what I found really interesting, because you go through the documents. I tried to get some answers here, and I at this point, this was the dismissal. And why I'm showing this is because I often will get, why didn't you reach out to Dustin? I did, and publicly he had stated, I think the piece and work speak for themselves. Hope you have a great holiday weekend. Cool. Nice, short, sweet message. No complaints. If he doesn't want to talk to me, no problem. Moving on. But I still want to highlight his work. So I went to his blog, downloaded the one document that he did actually publish, and try and piece this together for you guys. Because again, it really kind of plays a few roles here. Not only shows you how that FOIA litigation worked and why, but also how it was so misrepresented that it's problematic to this discussion. Because some of the comments that I'm seeing, again, you get persuaded by these types of, overinflated, dramatized tweets. When you have a platform like that, it changes people's perspectives, but it changes it to the wrong way. And it's not because I disagree or anything like that. It's provably wrong. And that's what's very unfortunate, because now it's like you're constantly combating the false misinformation and disinformation that's put out there by the same people preaching that they want transparency and truthfulness and accuracy. And it's like it's a full-time job just to battle the misinformation that's being put out there. Now, we know that there was litigation that brought the Mosul Orb out. It was filed in March of 2024, but it was not to battle the secrecy. It was to battle the delay. And the delay was what they were trying to say was why they were essentially litigating. Now, under FOIA, you can absolutely do that. I choose not to. In 29 years, I have figured out that they are incredibly backlogged. And by filing litigation, or even in an appeal, if they take longer than the statutory time that they're allowed to answer you, it delays the process more, because then in most cases, not all, but in a lot of cases, a FOIA appeal, or in this one, a filing with the courts, goes to a different office that is in large part a lot less staffed than some of the FOIA offices. So even though you're going to court, and yay, the problem is that you may actually end up waiting longer. So for me, and this is my opinion, not against the actions here, but you got to put it into proper perspective. The appeal was, or excuse me, the litigation was the time the appeal was taking to process. So let's go through a couple points, just for those who want to learn a little bit more about this process. You can glean this from the documents that Dustin had put on his website. I'm not going to read it all to you. It's a lot of legal stuff, but these are the key points. The original request went into NASIC, which they did not publish the exhibits. So the exhibits are like, they're making reference to a letter or something like that. They didn't publish that. So again, we just kind of have to fill in the blanks here. But April 5th, 2023, plaintiff submitted a FOIA request for records to NASIC. Exhibit 101 is plaintiff's FOIA request language and defendant's confirmation of receipt, and it is attached and made part of this complaint. Plaintiff made an initial request for all, quote, all documentation submitted by U.S. Air Force personnel to NASIC pertaining to unidentified aerial phenomena, unidentified aerospace phenomena, unidentified flying objects, and unidentified unmanned aerial systems and vehicles. The time period of the request is from March 1, 2022, up to and including the date this request is officially processed. Now, again, I don't want any of this to come off that I'm harping on anybody, but for educational purposes, just going to throw in my couple cents here if it's worth that. If you recall a couple slides ago, I had asked, how are you guys advertising this as unidentified? What is the root of that? How can you confirm that? And this was the part that was cited as the confirmation. The FOIA request asked for unidentified flying object material, ergo the responsive records are unidentified. Sadly, that is not true because in there is unidentified unmanned aerial systems and vehicles as well. So all of that is kind of treated as an or in the eyes of the FOIA, even though there's the word and here. That's kind of a broad scope. So the Mosul Orb could absolutely be a drone. I don't know if it is, but it could absolutely be one, and that would technically be responsive. But what's interesting, even more so about this, is March 1, 2022, up to including the date of this request. The Mosul Orb was from 2016. So technically, it shouldn't even be responsive to this request. Now check this out, because then this part makes sense. Originally, on November 14th, 2023, NASIC emailed plaintiff and stated that the OPR, that's the Office of Primary Responsibility, was not able to locate any records. NASIC also attached a final determination letter that it referred to as a no records found form. The letter stated a search was conducted to locate any records you requested and no records could be located. If you interpret this no records response as an adverse action, you may appeal it to the Secretary of the Air Force. Exhibit 113 is defendant's final determination letter dated November 14, 2023, and it is attached and made part of this complaint. Why is that key? What they got isn't responsive. So I think what they're trying to do now is fulfill during this litigation process part of it, because none of the secrecy had anything to do with it. They didn't even find anything to fight anyway. Now, you can appeal and you can litigate on a no records return. So if you have proper reason to say, well, wait a minute, I know for a fact, NASIC, you do have UAP or UAV videos or whatever from the 2022 date to today's date. And so I'm going to litigate based on that. Cool. Yeah, that is absolutely your right to do it. But what they got didn't fit into the time frame. So it makes you wonder, does NASIC have anything? Here's another interesting tidbit that I've learned since Arrow came about, is that a lot of times the data that they get is essentially let go from the originating agency. So what's referenced here as the OPR, they essentially will send it over to Arrow. It will stay at Arrow's side. And then the Navy, they just usually, because there's no investigative arm over there now, it's Arrow, that they may dump it on their side. So essentially they're transferring that data over. Now, if it comes up in a FOIA review for declassification or review to make sure there's no exemptions or whatever, then it will go back to the OPR. But the data itself no longer exists at the Navy because there may be a respective retention schedule that deletes it. Good God, it gets completely boring. I get it. And it's nitty gritty, but you have to look at it from the eyes of not only the Freedom of Information Act law, but how these offices operate. So where did NASIC and the Justice Department attorney get this? I'm not really sure. But I'm not there yet in the timeline, but I'm wanted to kind of show you that originally they had this no records response, which they appealed. I want to first, though, show you the processing time. Now, this is where I say litigation is absolutely your right as a FOIA requester to do it. There will be FOIA requesters out there that may disagree with me, and that's cool. I don't think that there's a right or wrong answer. This is just my 2 cents. It took 222 days for Dustin to get a response to his request. He had in that legal document, I didn't go over every point, but kind of the dates of the back and forth. Hey, what's the status of my request? Can you guys give me a ECD, or what's called an estimated completion date? All of that is kind of normal FOIA inside baseball stuff. You do it if you want to stay on top of a request. I try to, but it doesn't, there's not enough hours in the day. So you just kind of, let it go and then check in from time to time. So it took 222 days. The average processing time for the United States Air Force, the average for the complex track is 119 days. But some of the higher cases go into thousands of days. So is 222 days all that off the wall? To be honest with you, not really. So again, he didn't litigate based on that. He litigated off of the no records response. But I'm kind of giving you guys an idea that this is kind of normal. Because then when you get to the appeal track, on December 18th, 2023, plaintiff mailed his administrative appeal dated December 13th, 2023 via certified mail to the address listed on the final determination letter found in Exhibit 113. Exhibit 114 is plaintiff's administrative appeal, and it is attached and made part of this complaint. Sorry, it's getting a little bit warm under the lights. Need a little bit more beverage to get to the end. Sorry about that. Tea can get a little bubbly. On December 18th, appeal goes in and he waits. Now, by law, you have about 30 days. On January 31, 2024, defendant confirmed receipt of plaintiff's administrative appeal. So they confirmed receipt. 20 days passed on February 29th. And at that point, the 30 days passed on March 14th, 2024. And obviously they filed their case based on their lack of response within that 30 days. Not a wrong thing to do. I'm not going to harp on it at all. On my side, I would not have. Simply because then you start getting into now a much lengthier process, in my opinion. That when you look at the appeal response times that the DoD has, it was very hard for me to find a specific number for you guys on, like U.S. Air Force specific issues, or especially NASIC, but DoD-wide, your litigation may end up lasting longer because none of this is time sensitive. Where stuff gets expedited, lives have to be in danger. So you have to show, medical issues or something like that. You're suing for records. There's a lot of other cases where you get into FOIA and Privacy Act issues that justify expediting in the courts, and then the courts will agree with you. We're talking about UFO videos. As much as we all love that, you can't really do it. So that's, again, in my 2 cents, why I don't do those paths at this point, because you appealed, you submitted your appeal. I don't know what the appeal said, so it's a shame. I would love to see, what is it exactly that you're appealing, because that one video that came up was, again, years outside the scope. But regardless, that's why I kind of don't do it at this level, because 222 days for a FOIA to United States Air Force and then NASIC specifically. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of long. It's obviously over the average, but not unheard of. And appeals, I don't think I ever get appeal decisions within 30 days. So should I sue on everything? In my opinion, no, because that'll prolong it. I kind of sit tight, and then you just ask for those dates and kind of keep on top of them and go from there. No right or wrong answer, just my 2 cents. The end of the complaint that was filed with the courts, what they wanted to have done was declare that the defendant, or the government side, violated the FOIA, order defendant to conduct a reasonable search for all records, order defendant to issue a determination, order defendant to make all non-exempt records or portions of records promptly available to plaintiff, enjoin defendant from withholding all non-exempt public records under FOIA, award plaintiff's attorney fees and costs, and award such other relief the court considers appropriate and just. So apparently, after this was filed, I assume it was recent. So this is March 2024, March 26, 2024, that this goes into the courts. I assume, unless they sat on it, that Dustin in July, quite possibly the end of June, all would be great to get clarification on, but at that time got the video. So well over a year, they got a video that wasn't even in the scope of the original request. Doesn't make sense. But since the actual case had nothing to do with secrecy, the question mark is, would it have played out differently? There was absolutely no legal argument for releasing information. It was just the demand to do so. On top of that, it was just fighting the delay. It was not fighting a denial. All of those are incredibly important. That is not fundamentally changing FOIA. That is utilizing FOIA as it exists. These tools are available to us. FOIA is not broken. FOIA is hurt, has band-aids, and needs help, but it's not broken. It's not dead. It's incredibly useful. And thanks to FOIA, this process was afforded to Dustin to utilize. So even though it's frustrating you have to go to these lengths, it's there for you for a reason, because FOIA exists. So I'm an advocate for FOIA. Again, think it needs a lot of help. But the way that this was portrayed to the general public was wrong. It was inaccurate, misleading, and I don't know why there is a trend of doing that. Because you're taking a great story. This is a great story. You're mad that you're waiting. FOIA affords you the tools to fight it. You fought it, and you're getting a response. Is it quicker if you just would have waited? You can argue that both ways. But regardless of what I feel it is, hey, it's a win. So to cheapen that and to make these grandiose statements is ludicrous. But to close it with this, in the podcast, on Weaponized, when all this came out, Dustin Slaughter was told, don't talk to anybody else. Tell me, this was Jeremy Corbell saying it, tell me what you got. In other words, sit on it, let me do it and announce it and essentially get the credit, and then you can publish your blog. And that's exactly what happened. He waited until, according to the show, a minute before they aired to press publish. That article goes out, and then they did the interview. That to me is also wrong. Now, that's my advocate for transparency side talking, but you should never embargo somebody who got something through FOIA. There's no reason for that. And I saw the argument that he would have gotten more exposure by doing what he did and letting Corbell take it off. That's not true at all. He would have got the same exact exposure if he published his blog that day, the day prior, a week prior, whatever. When Jeremy Corbell wants to profile it, and rightfully so, he should be profiled, he would get the same amount of exposure. So that argument is completely silly. So that's what cheapens this conversation. It hurts it. It puts an inappropriate and absolutely erroneous context to everything. It misleads the public, and it creates a hell of a lot of confusion. And it's unfortunate because a good story is ruined in the process. And yes, I do get fired up about it because I can truly appreciate somebody using FOIA and getting a good result. So to have it cheapened, all the sake for podcast clicks, that to me is stupid. This was the quote that came out. It kind of arrived out of the blue, meaning the Mosul Orb video. My attorney and I got an email from a Justice Department lawyer who's representing the Air Force in the case. He just attached this video, sent it to us, and said, by the way, here's this video that they found. Why? I would love to ask questions about that. But why? How did the scope of the case change? Like, why is a 2016 video coming up? Did you agree to have the scope changed? Did they say, hey, the scope that you had was narrow, but we do have some that's outside of the scope? There are FOIA offices that want to help. They're not all bad and evil. So there's a lot of context missing here. And the way that this was, again, built up was completely wrong. And when you look at the actual evidence, you realize, oh, okay, still a very cool story. Absolutely not what it was led to be. So to close this, and I'll see what other questions I might pull from you, and I'll hang out with you guys for as long as you'd like. But this is hurtful. I've said it quite a few times now in this video, and I'm beating that dead horse, but it needs to be beaten. It's hurting the conversation. You're creating a false narrative about what really the UAP issue is all about. You are exaggerating claims to points of it being just incredibly unhealthy because it's delusional. You are maliciously withholding information. I went over the 29 Palms thing. There was a whole part of that story that was just omitted, that was not told to the general public. That's wrong. That's not journalism, it's activism. And you have to start at some point asking, what is the intention here? Do you want just a cool podcast with a lot of clicks and make a, side income or even a full income? I don't know what they make, but I'm sure it's not nothing. They got a lot of different products and books and appearances, and they get a lot of views. They've got a big audience. That translates. You get on TV. That's your brand. You've got a full sold series to TMZ. That's not $5. You're talking about a nice paycheck. So when it benefits you monetarily, and I'm speaking broadly here, but obviously I'm also speaking specific to this show and the way that they handled some of these stories now, you have to ask, what really is that intention? And I can comfortably say now that it's not to inform you and I the truth. It's just simply to get you hanging on for next week. What is it that we're going to tease in the video next week? Whose help are we going to solicit so we can hang on to stuff so we have content for weeks and months to come? That's not transparency. That's not being truthful to anybody. That's being self-serving. And although that's a business model that may work for some people, and hey, we live in the great country, America, where we've got the freedom to do whatever the hell we want. We can be as successful as we want to be. We can work as hard as we want to work to be successful. But it's how you get to success that really defines you. And that's where I struggle with stories like this and elsewhere, where I see people getting tons of money thrown at them, all for what? Lying and misleading. And that's wrong. It is incredibly hurtful to this conversation. And I don't care if I beat that dead horse multiple times over and over. I'll continue to do it because more people should. And if you don't believe me, just look around at some of the claims that are out there and try and fact check some of them. Me included. If you think something I said is wrong, fact check it, please. And if I'm wrong, I'll correct it. Somebody on Reddit pointed out to me something that I wrote, and he thought I was going to get all mad. I was actually wrong. I had a word in there called multi-hour. And it was a descriptor that means a lot to me when I'm wrong. I want to fix it. And they had commented back to me, they're like, wow, thanks for not being I won't use the phrase they used, but, I forget exactly what they said, but it was like, I thought you'd be a big jerk about it. I was like, no, I looked at it. You're right. I made a mistake, and we all make mistakes. It's how you correct them is the issue. And to me, that's where I get fired up because people are being misled. And that to me is what I get fired up the most about, is people that are misleading. And that goes for multiple sides of this conversation. Those that are profiting off of these outlandish UFO exaggerated claims, but also the people that are trying to brand themselves as that debunker side, whether they have a platform on a tabloid or whether they have, just a YouTube channel or X account or a former TikTok, whatever, whoever they are, whatever they want to boast to be. It goes both ways. And those are the types of people that get me fired up because they just want to mislead. And that's what's frustrating. All right. That's my diatribe. That's my vent session for the day. Let me switch over here. John, thank you so much for this. You're one of the very few left with integrity. I appreciate that, and very much thank you for the sentiment. But I also mean it to everybody. You know, that we're in this together. It should be teamwork. I know I can be snarky on X, but I'm usually only snarky to those who deserve it. So when people don't want to, share information and stuff like that, to me, it's kind of a red flag. What is going on here? And look, I want to keep an open mind on what's going on with some other people that are out there. Sometimes it's hard. I can only do the best I can. I really appreciate, John, your compliment there. It means a lot to me because, look, I'm not perfect, but I try and be the best I can for this channel, learn as much as I can, and pass on as much as I can as well. So thank you for that. Don't touch Melm crazy. Topic went from flying saucers and spacemen to a B-movie spy thriller about FOIA requests. I don't care anymore. Thanks for anything. Thanks for everything, John. Well, look, FOIA requests are important, but I'm also biased when it comes to my love for FOIA. But they can be really boring. And I get that. And which is why I try and, make some of these videos much more interesting and try and keep a little bit more, I don't want to say excitement because I'm not making a TV show here, but make it interesting and highlight that stuff. But sometimes you got to deal with the boring stuff to truly understand it. And it comes along with the territory. But your broader point here is topic went from flying saucers and spacemen to a B-movie spy thriller. I don't care anymore. Part of me thinks that's the point. And I don't know why for some of these people, they don't want you to care. They're so offended by you caring or you having a different belief. I talked about beliefs earlier and how some people are very offended by opposite beliefs of their own and so on and so forth. That's what they want. And I don't understand it. I really don't. Because I see these X exchanges back and forth sometimes or other social media networks. And admittedly, I get in the middle of some of them as well. Sometimes I just can't resist pointing out when people are acting stupid. But that being said, I'm joking. I'm really not trying to be malicious there. But sometimes end up in the middle of these exchanges. But it's just mind-blowing and mind-boggling to me that people can be so offended at other people's beliefs. Now, I have a little bit of a different idea when somebody is, again, maliciously misleading, even though they may even believe what they're saying. That to me is a little bit different, but I'm talking about just beliefs that some people have different levels of thresholds that they have to meet to believe something. And others get so offended at that. It is mind blowing to me and is a complete show of insecurity, if you ask me. But, it doesn't bother me one bit if you have different views than me. In fact, I love hearing that because that's the audience I want. I don't want an echo chamber here. But again, where I do get fired up is when people are misleading or saying things that just blatantly aren't true. And that's what we don't need more of. So don't give up. Don't not care. I hope you stick around because we need more people that care about the details and care about the accuracy behind it all. Alex Modeling. Do you think the current UAP narrative, largely driven whistleblower politics and media personalities, is less about actual disclosure and more about self-promotion? Greetings from Portugal. Alex, thank you for that question. Look, I believe for some it absolutely is more about self-promotion. Absolutely. I think that's a given. You look around and people name everything they do after their own name. Like they have to have their own name on everything. It's Joe Blow this, Joe Blow that, Joe Blow this. Look, the Black Vault I'm the entire thing, but I've created it separate than me, because I feel, as cheesy as this will come off, that it's kind of all of us, right? I mean, we're all in this together trying to figure it out. And that was the root of almost 30 years ago, naming it what I did. I mean, it is a vault of information, but it's dark and you have to look around, and we're kind of in this together trying to figure out what's there. So a brand is one thing. Self-promotion is an entirely different thing. And I think for some, it is absolutely that they believe they have the answers and no one else does. They believe everyone else is crazy except them. They believe that everyone else is wrong except them. They think that they're the best this or the best that, and no one else can be near them. The descriptors pile on and on. And yes, for some, it is more about self-promotion. But thankfully, not everybody. I think that there's a lot of people out there, and I'd like to think of myself on this list. We just want to know the truth. And we just want to know the answers. We want to know what's really going on. And if it's something we've long believed, if it's something that we don't believe, never thought was a possibility, whatever it may be, I'm in the group that wants to figure it out nonetheless. And that is where I think a lot of people do stand. Sadly, though, the entire arena is muddied by those that think different. And that's what's truly, truly unfortunate about the whole thing, that you do have so many of those out there. Let me now switch back to the other one. Now you tripping, bro. Jeremy and George are legit. They've done a lot for the topic. They make mistakes. It's bound to happen. No doubt. I will not disagree with that one bit about making mistakes. It's how you deal with making the mistake that really is the definition of who you are. And I've seen enough that you may not agree, and that's totally okay. Not a problem. They clearly have a huge following. There's going to be a ton of people that don't agree with me on this. It is not a popular thing to say. But I do believe that there is an intent to not give the full story. There are certain elements to stories that they've even broken, that I've given them credit for, that they will omit or never touch because it doesn't coincide with the original image they had about a certain case. Mosul Orb is a prime example. I mean, that was clearly a classified product, and the proof was there. But the narrative stood that it was unclassified and so on. All of these are important distinctions. To some, it's small. To others, it's very important. And it shouldn't be too much to ask for accuracy. The 29 Palms thing, I'll go to that again. That was intentional. They completely omitted the fact that there was a full training exercise launching flares the night of their flying triangle, alleged triangle. And then it took me literally, I think it was 45 minutes to an hour at best, to come up with a video that matched. And it was an official DOD video. And they tried to claim that, again, that was planted. It was a big conspiracy. Jeremy Corbell played into that online. That is unhealthy. Those aren't mistakes. That's malicious. And that's problematic. Not popular. I'll get hate mail from this. Somebody will clip this and put it on X and say, you know, Greenwald's a big old meanie and so on and so forth. But it does need to be said. I respect your opposite point of view, no doubt, but just respectfully disagree. Some of these I can't put on. Sorry, I'll scroll up though. If you can help me out and put them all in capital letters, that would be a huge help. Good morning, UFO. Always good to see you here. Hi, UFO friends. Hi, John. Hello back to you. Always good to see you. I appreciate this, Del Sky. You are so far from a nobody, John. You have searched for facts for decades, now longer than most researchers. You are an important part of this UFO community, even if you don't think so. I appreciate that. Again, I know nobody owes me an answer or anything like that. So I do reinforce that part. And look, I consider myself a nobody. I don't have any more answers than anyone else. I just love this topic and, want to bring the best to you guys and learn as much as I can along the way. I appreciate this. Chamo, not sure how you pronounce that. I think you do a great job, though. You're also legit. Keep up the good work. And I appreciate that. And thanks for listening to my 2 cents about respectfully disagreeing with your comment above. But I appreciate that. I disagree, John. I don't respect anyone who takes Corbell seriously. Look, yeah, there's something to be said on that. I think there are some that will definitely ignore what you shouldn't be ignoring, and it's unfortunate. But look, I'm going to step away from making it seem like I'm just harping on him. This has been a problem for a very long time in the UFO conversation, longer than I've been alive. There have been people that have infiltrated this space that do make it all about them, that want to have the newest book, the newest whatever product that they're selling. Their main income is the book. Look, I'm an author. I fully support authors and those that write books. So I'm not harping on that. But you can kind of tell the difference between those that are writing to inform. And yes, profiting is okay. There's nothing wrong with that. So please, I'm not saying that people can't make a business. Make an honest one, though. And I think that that's what's missing with a lot of these people. And that has stretched on for decades. Years and years ago, again, it was the books. It was staying on the tour of the speaking circuit in this realm. It was making sure that you always had a new book coming out, hold on to information. Sometimes your story would get better, as it's like a fine wine. So you had to do another book because you remembered something new. And so you have to come out with a new one, and for 1999, you too can be privy to this information. It's a tough thing to wade through to try and separate those things. That was then. This is now. Now books have been replaced with what's the next new podcast. Now, instead of a book every 6 months to a year, it's a podcast every week. How can I do a YouTube show? How can I this and that? Again, profiting is not bad. I fully support it 100%. I have no bad thing to say about any channel that's monetized or even a paywall. If your information you feel you should paywall. I don't support paywalls because, again, I'm an advocate for transparency, but I'm not going to harp on you for having one if you feel like you do. Just be honest. So again, those books have morphed into the 21st century way of keeping your business alive. And that is the YouTube shows, what's my next viral video? You see that on X a lot. There's select accounts that, they may not get a lot of traction on YouTube because the algorithm hates stuff like that, but they get a lot of traction on X because the algorithm loves the views on X videos. So you see that a lot with I won't give them any publicity, but there's certain X accounts, they have hundreds of thousands of followers and they have the cheapest, ridiculous looking CG videos. And that's how, they stay alive. And they've got no face. It's just a nickname or an avatar. And that's how they do it. And they'll put anything out. They don't care about reputation. They don't have one. But they get the clicks and views and they make that money. So look, I may in this video have harped on a certain select few, but I can tell you just from experience for 29 now years into this field, specifically to UFOs and UAP and stuff like that, it's been a problem for a long time. And not every author fits in that category. Not every YouTube host fits in that category. Not even every podcast or X user who has popular accounts fits in that category. But it is an issue and it is something that has to be pointed out. And like I said, I wish more people would do it. I wish more people would talk about it. Because you have to. People should be held accountable. And I put myself in that list. I don't have the biggest audience, but I have a audience. And it's my responsibility to be truthful. And if I screw up, then I will own up to it. And again, I use that Reddit example. I misrepresented the event to say it was multi-hour. And what I was referring to fit in 1 hour. And my descriptor was wrong. Cool. I corrected it, thanked the guy publicly, and apologized. What else can you do? So it's those types of things that I think separates those that really do have a true intent with all of this and those that don't and just care about themselves. Juan Rodriguez, thank you for that support. I think maybe you also supported in the beginning of the show. So thank you for that again. I truly, truly appreciate that. Sorry, just getting caught up here. I need a auction. John, have you been able to talk with Grusch for any FOIA ideas. I wish I could. Look, it's no secret that I have my reservations about certain claims that he's made. But as I've proven with those that I may have reservations believing wholeheartedly everything that they say, I still act on it. In the very beginning, I did try and talk to him. It was kind of before I ever voiced any opinion or concern or whatever on his stuff. Again, doesn't owe me anything, but didn't return calls or whatever. Where I started to kind of turn a little bit on my viewpoint, because he really does strike me as somebody who's genuine and that he genuinely believes. I don't get the malicious vibe from him. I've long said that. But that's not to say that he hasn't been misled by certain individuals that maybe, led him to believe certain things or certain ways. I'm interested to hear about his firsthand, experiences, should those ever come out in that op-ed that was, teased a year or two ago, that never came to fruition. But where my thoughts kind of changed a little bit was a lot of his claims about the Dopser process. And this tied into something he said on his Jesse Michaels interview. And I feel very, very strongly that it's wrong. And again, I don't want to equate that he's maliciously misleading, but the fact that word had gotten to Jesse Michaels, which I have no problem with, so I'm not harping on him, but he went on a space and talked about what I said and talked to Grusch about it. And apparently Grusch said, maybe, I'm paraphrasing here, but it was something to the effect of, oh, maybe I am wrong on that, which I give a lot of respect to. I mean, look, I could be wrong too. So I just don't think I am in this instance. It's more procedural than belief. So let me stress that, but can respect him being open to being wrong. And then in this space, Jesse Michael says, no, but I think Greenwald's wrong. And then just went on to why I was wrong, but never proved why I was wrong. And so again, that's not a personal attack on Jesse. I like Jesse. I've talked to him a couple times, but that video clip I've posted before where it's like, wait, then let me just chat with him. If he thinks I'm wrong, then let me hear it. We can clear this up. But there's no desire to communicate. And then, of course, he's just largely disappeared. So he doesn't owe me or anybody anything. It really doesn't. But I think that how you lay that bombshell out, even to the point of testifying before Congress, and then just disappear, to me, that's a red flag, especially when you're advertising an op-ed that was already cleared by the U.S. government that was supposed to come out again like a year or two ago, and then you just you ghost everybody. Well, that's not right, because everybody you're ghosting is what gave you kind of that gas to get to where you were. It was the public's reaction to David Grusch that I think kind of excelled him to the point of getting all that attention. I mean, you can't just be a nobody and come out and make a claim and all of a sudden you're world famous. I do think that we, the people, played a role in that. And I'm not even saying me, I'm just saying the general populace and their reaction to the original story going back to the debrief and News Nation. And I think that reaction kind of pushed him more into the spotlight. Because I mean no offense to the debrief and News Nation, those are not the biggest outlets out there. So if you really have the meat behind your claims, why would you start there? God, it sounds awful to say it out loud, but my bigger point is it was based on that pushed him to the bigger outlets all the way to being under oath with Congress. So again, I mean no offense to the other outlets I named here, but he had to kind of start there, and it was the people themselves that got him going and gave him that oomph. Because if nobody really gave anything, I'm again trying to watch my language here, but if nobody really cared when he came out in the debrief and then the News Nation article, would he have ended up in front of Congress? No. I mean, like if honestly, if people were just like, that guy's full of it, who really cares? And there was no traction to the articles and nobody picked up on it, talked about it because they didn't believe it, then you wouldn't have that traction. And yet the opposite happened. So again, I think the public deserves a little bit more respect when you lay that type of a bombshell and then say, hey, more is coming, and they dangle the carrot, and the DOD approved this Dopser stuff for his op-ed, and you refuse to show it. To me, that's incredibly problematic, if you ask me. So yeah, I'll close the thought there. But I wish again, it's that team element. I feel, and I'm not speaking for Mick West here, but I'm going to bring him up again as an example. I have nothing against him, and I feel, despite disagreement between him and I on a lot of issues, we're still on the team of trying to get to the truth. I know a lot of people hate him because he burst the bubble of a lot of people, and he comes up with stuff that's great in some cases. Other stuff I disagree with, but regardless, there should be communication there. And so, Mick, if you ever see this or whatever, I hope you don't mind me saying it, but that's an example of what I think where we should be in the conversation. Respectful disagreement. Mick and I have exchanged stuff on X that's not all puppies and rainbows, but it ain't rude. It's not us going at each other's throats or blocking each other or whatever. And yet we largely disagree on a lot of stuff, but we agree on others. And we can have the conversation both publicly and privately and figure out stuff, just like the videos. I'm glad he brought it up to me because I forgot. But regardless, even if I didn't and he wanted them, I was super happy to give it to him and share that information. That's what we need more of. So for him to, just tease and drop carrots and stuff like that, and it's not like he has to work with me. There's lots of people that use FOIA out there. But if you know stuff that Dopser has approved, and even though you're not going to publish your op-ed, work with some of those people. See what you can get out. Is he? I don't know. I hope so. But I've asked around. I've searched around. I don't see any evidence that he's trying. And that's unfortunate. It really is, because there should be more of a team aspect of all of this. And there's not. The UFO community as it was when I started 29 years ago is dead. Full stop. It's unfortunate. I remember I emceed the MUFON symposiums, the International MUFON symposiums, for about a decade. And I was the MC. It was awesome. I loved it. I love conferences. I don't harp on anybody speaking at conferences whatsoever because I love them. There is a human aspect of it that we are largely missing with social media interaction. You learn things. You realize we're just all people. You realize people have experiences that are not on TV every day, that they're not asking for your money, that they don't even want any exposure whatsoever. But they're in the back row of some of these conferences, sitting very, very quietly, very rarely opening their mouth, but they want the truth. And that is one of the coolest things to see, especially for me, who's very skeptical about those big claims. I've talked to people that have had all sorts of experiences, had dinners, drinks, you hang out at a bar. That's some of the funnest times at these conferences, because people realize, hey, we're all just human. You don't get that on X. You just get a bunch of bullshit on X. Like, sorry, you just do. But when you go to these conferences, you realize, okay, for the most part, everybody is just trying to get the answers. And that's what's a lot of fun. And that's what we need more of. Today, it's kind of dead. With kids, it's very hard for me to travel. Super, super hard. Primarily because I love my kids dearly. And I don't want to miss anything. And I'm kind of a geeky dad like that, but it's like if I miss a soccer game or I miss, a gymnastics event for my daughter now, like it kills me inside. Like, I don't want to be that dad who's traveling all the time and, they grow up to be adults and go, yeah, my dad just worked all the time. I never saw him. I work a lot, but I make sure that I'm there. So it's very, very tough for me to travel. So I'm hoping that some of these conferences are like they were 10 years ago, but I can tell you that the entire community, the way that it was, is dead. It's not the same anymore, and we're losing a lot of those people that made it the community that it was. Look, I may not have agreed with all of Stanton Friedman's conclusions, but I'll be damned, that dude was a gentleman and he worked hard. He was one of those people that was physically going to these archives, making phone calls, picking up the phone. There's others who think they're doing good work and they sit on the computer and go to LinkedIn and find somebody to contact. And all of a sudden, they think that's work and they're, supposed to be glorified for it. Nah, you look at like the Stanton Friedmans, the Ted Phillips, both of which I hope are laughing in a better place than this about, what ufology has become. But those guys were awesome. And I had the pleasure to be friends with them for years. And that's the UFO community that I miss, that I wish, would come around again. And we've lost that. And admittedly, again, me getting sometimes entwined in some of these exchanges, I've lost part of that. And that's very difficult for me to accept, because I look back at, the dinners, the private dinners that I would have with Stanton Friedman and stuff when we were on the road together, and we would lecture at conferences. And we'd, sometimes I remember one conference, I think this was it was Kimberling City, Missouri, right? It was like in the middle of, nowhere, but some of the most beautiful country you could ever see. And Stanton and I were staying at this bed and breakfast. And I come out of my room, and he's like staying away from me, right across the way from me. And we were both kind of like, startled each other. We're like, Stan. And he said, John. He's like, I didn't know you would be here. Because the way that Kimberling City was, they didn't really have, a ton of places to stay. So people were just kind of scattered all over the place. Stan and I were right next to each other. So we got a taxi, because Uber didn't exist at the time. And went to this Chinese food place and just chatted, and had we were there for an hour and a half or so, and just chatted. Those are the types of things that, again, I miss dearly. Being able to call them, on the telephone and say, oh, I got this new document. I want to run it by you because you're a hell of a lot smarter than I am. So what do you think? And Stan would look at it. He was so gracious with his time. That's what we're missing, And so those types of experiences have led me to be the jaded asshole that I am today, because I see the people that absolutely forget about that community, and they forget what it's like to share information and learn from each other. And the bottom line, it's okay to have beliefs that are different from each other. That's all part of this conversation. And so many people have lost that. So anyway, I digress. I hope one day, and it probably won't happen, to go back to that. Okay. Half of this, not to me. John, what's your take on Skywatcher? So I've talked a little bit about Jake Barber on this. I assume you're meaning, that whole effort of, skywatching and being able to summon and that whole thing. Look, I need hard data when it comes to those types of claims. If somebody has that capability or they have methods to do that, then it should be very easy to prove. So I'd like to see more. I'm very open to it. But to me, it just doesn't look good. The optics of how that whole story came about was not necessarily the best, in my opinion. The rollout, and then all of a sudden there was this big organization and they were doing things that could summon UFOs and all that. Look, if there is some information that comes out where they can prove what they said, I'm all over it. I would love to look at it. I'll even profile it if it's legit. But until then, I'm very, very skeptical about that. Omar C. Next one is on me. I appreciate the work you do. Well, Omar, I will raise my glass of iced tea to you. I truly appreciate that. Thank you. I knew I'd be on here for a while, so I put one in my glass and then kind of lined up another one for halfway through, and then that's where I kind of leaned over when I thought no one was looking. I don't know. Apparently there were 2,000 of you looking, but I appreciate that, Omar. Thank you. All right, so I'm looking for the question. So forgive my awkward moments of silence here as I look for some of these are always funny. Alex Modeling, since Mr. Stanton T. Friedman passed away, UFO world went dead and almost void. Sorry to say. He was, not to go off on a tangent again on him, or about him, I should say. Absolutely. I think that he was very much, even though like he believed in obviously that Roswell had happened, and not everybody believes that, and they believe, it was a mogul balloon, whatever. He obviously, nobody can argue he didn't put the work into that. But there was something about him that really was that glue that kind of held things together. That despite the, hey, I believe aliens crash landed in 1947 element to him, which today is like, come on, like you got to show more than that. That's the reaction that you get. He brought with him just that credibility to him. But he brought it for the field as well, and the whole conversation. And it's interesting to see how that's changed, because if you deleted Stanton Friedman altogether and then somebody came out with Roswell claims, I don't think anybody would give them the time of day. I don't think that anybody would put the amount of work that Stanton Friedman did into that today. I don't believe there's anybody around. And I don't believe people have the know-how anymore. I mean, Stanton was the type that picked up the phone. A lot of quote unquote researchers, they don't even know how to dial a phone number anymore. I mean, they think they Google something and they've made, the next biggest discovery of ufology, and they need to write a book about something. But in reality, Stanton was, that guy that picked up the phone, that went to the archives, that drove around. Yeah, there was an element of all of this that died with him. And that is truly unfortunate, because he was, I hate to use the expression, a dying breed of people that covered every base. And I've told the story before on this channel. It's been some time, but I'll just briefly bring it up. But sitting in the National Archives at College Park, Maryland, across from Stanton Friedman, it was an absolute trip. I mean, it was insane to see the man in his element. And I was just learning the element. I'd never been to an archive at that point. I think that was probably my first time, if not maybe my second, but first, and learning. He would tell me about the finding aids and kind of help me, and then passed on that knowledge. Absolute amazing experience. But there's not a whole lot of people like that anymore. I mean, really look around, look at the researchers. Do they really do that research? Do they really go to the archives? Yeah, a couple of them absolutely do. But do many? And the answer is no. It's a very small number of people that go out there and do it. So you nailed it, Alex. I wish you didn't. I'd love to disagree with you, but sadly, you're absolutely spot on. Grant from Down Under, always good to see you, buddy. If you guys haven't seen Grant, I'm going to embarrass you for a second. If you guys have not seen Grant's X account, Grant, put it in the chat. If I forget how YouTube works on the chat, if you can put URLs, look up. I think it's Bigfoot Disclosure Diaries, and it's Grant started making these videos. I'm sure you've seen the AI, funny Bigfoot videos. Grant made a spinoff of Bigfoot Diaries, and one of the first ones he did, really, I think hands down, it's gonna be hard to beat that, but they're all worth watching. He's made a couple thus far. It's brand new, but throw him a follow. It's well deserving. It's a fun break from the madness that is X. It's why I stay on X. One of the reasons I stay on X, that people do awesome stuff, very creative. Grant, you're on that list, not only because you're a cool dude and I really like you, but when you started doing this, so cool. So definitely go check it out. If Grant, I have that wrong, I think it's Bigfoot Disclosure Diaries on X. Please post what it actually is if I'm messing that up. But yeah, embarrassment over. But Grant, well done. It's very funny. Love these comments. Yes, thanks for that friendly reminder. Hit that like button. It really does help. No matter where you're listening, obviously the majority of you on YouTube, hit that thumbs up. It helps with the algorithm. Like, share, all that good stuff. Really does help me. Make sure you're subscribed. I'll give you your money back if you hate the channel, but it is free. So feel free to subscribe, and obviously turn the bell on so you can get notified. A lot of times I am last minute. Today I gave you, I think, like an hour heads up. That was like a long time. Because usually it's like, oh, I'm going live in 4 minutes. And that's about the extent of it. So I try and plan for you guys, but that's the craziness of my life. But it does help. Yeah, definitely hit those thumbs up. I appreciate you reminding everybody. Safety Edge, you're so right. We're in the dark age of ufology. Another comment I'd love to disagree with, but sadly, we absolutely are. Working on an article on scientists from an AFRL, Air Force Research Lab, NASA Flying Saucer Project. Scientists also appeared on UFO shows. Also, Eric Davis connection. Any update on the History Channel FOIA? So, lot to unpack there. Scientists from an AFRL NASA Flying Saucer Project. I'm not sure what you might be referring to there. The Eric Davis connection, I remember I dug up years ago Franklin Mead and what he was connected with. I believe, if I remember correctly, it's quite a few years ago that I drew this line, but that he was connected to Project Outgrowth. And Project Outgrowth was very much like OSAP, where it was a forward-looking program 40 years into the future, looking at advanced technology and all that jazz. And Franklin Mead was a part of that. And then fast forward, there was another Air Force Research Lab project that included Franklin Mead as one of the co-authors, but the author was Dr. Eric Davis. Not sure if you're talking along the lines of that, or maybe I'm completely off base, but I wouldn't call it a flying saucer project, but Project Outgrowth, I think, dealt with advanced propulsion systems and stuff like that, even using telepathy in controlling propulsion with your mind as one of the more advanced ones. So, yeah, not sure if you're referring to all that. When it comes to the History Channel FOIA, that I'm not sure what you're referring to. I did post that in one of the document dumps that I'll be posting on the Black Vault. In fact, the article was written. I just shifted gears because that Wright-Patterson stuff came in. But that's written. I did post the document, and that was how they viewed internally at the DoD the show Unidentified, and essentially said, we don't help conspiracy theory shows. And, they obviously had a very bad idea of what the show was. I'm not, so that wasn't a History Channel FOIA, but rather that just was a History Channel reference. Feel free to comment again. Because I'm not sure what you mean there. So hopefully I addressed it, but I'm not sure. John, do you think the New Jersey drones have anything to do with UAP? I just don't get why we got basically no answers that made any sense at all. Alan, great question. So I'm not sure how long you've been on the video. I know that, it's been a while now, 2 hours, 40 minutes. Awesome. Thank you. There's almost 2,400 of you watching now on the software stats here through X, YouTube, and Facebook. So I appreciate that. Always recommend subscribe to YouTube because that's where the majority of the videos show up. That said, do I believe that has anything to do with UAP? I don't know. Secrecy absolutely intrigues me, Alan. I don't have the answer to that. I know that a lot of stuff, especially when it came to the New Jersey drones, were very much identified and not considered unidentified, that they were commercial aircraft, helicopters, very easily determined. So I know that there was a lot of that, and that there was public hysteria that any blinking light in the sky was ET coming down ready to kill us. So that really got muddied. But I think that there probably were some elements to the New Jersey stuff that probably hold some kind of truth. What that is, I don't know. And does that connect to UAP? Likely. I mean, by definition, yes. If you're talking about like an anomalous phenomena that truly lacks any explanation whatsoever, I'm not really sure. Where the government kind of comes in and they give these, they were FAA authorized flights and stuff like that. Those types of things for me intrigue me more. It's like, well, you're not talking about a classified top secret mission to test X, Y, or Z, but rather if they were like some kind of FAA research programs, even if they had a level of secrecy, a lot of people that were asking questions wouldn't have been asking the questions they were, because they would have been notified of all of that. Or if they were, left in the dark, notified a lot sooner. So you did have a lot of politicians that were involved that should have known better if it was all just, FAA authorized drones and flights. But that's just speculation on my part. I don't know. The secrecy is weird. It's intriguing. I've got open FOIAs on it, but it also coincides with other events around the same time that were happening elsewhere that, in my opinion, are confirmed. You look at the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base material that came out. To me, it's irrelevant that the 7 videos, I think it's cool that the 7 videos, if they are, identified as planes, they're planes. But obviously, we're talking about a much deeper issue that prompted the closing of airspace on December 13th of last year, and obviously quite a few witnesses that we're seeing clearly drones. So either they're all delusional on mushrooms and completely made up everything, or that kind of stuff really happened, but people also took videos of airplanes and messed that up, but something else was going on. I think kind of probably the same is true with the New Jersey stuff. It's the what else is going on is the question that remains, and I don't have the answer to that. Truly anomalous, or is it just a nefarious bad actor doing something? I have no idea. Wish I did, but I'm digging on it. It's the Lightcraft project. Okay, there's a flying saucer model. I published the first article in the series. Okay, cool. Okay, got you now, on the same page. Yeah, well then the Eric Davis, Franklin Mead stuff is not pertaining to that. I don't think on the Lightcraft stuff Mead played a role. He may have. Memory doesn't serve. But yeah, you may want to look it up, just because there was the connection between the Dr. Eric Davis, Franklin Mead line, more present day, and then going back to almost an identical project that OSAP was originally intended back, 40 years, and that was Project Outgrowth. So it was a very interesting kind of line to draw. Red Panda Koala, enjoyed the stream today. Thank you, as I worked on things. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. All right, so I think that I got caught up on all those questions. So if you have any other questions, please feel free to put them now. If not, I'll go ahead and end it. I can't thank you guys enough for hanging out with me on a Saturday. It was a lot of fun for me. I have a blast doing these things and answering your questions, but hopefully the more structured presentation part was interesting to you. You learned a few things, and hey, look, I will punch the line that we should all be in this together. I wish we were. We should all communicate just from the bottom of my heart. Remain respectful to one another. And that goes to me too. Sometimes it's hard to remember all of that. I fall victim to, getting into exchanges where, you forget there's a human on the other side. And look, I'm in that category too. So I'm not preaching to you. I'm preaching to all of us, myself included. Just stay respectful. But, just remember, we all have different beliefs, and some don't agree with this, but that's okay. I think it's just fine. So that being said, thank you so much. If you haven't already, make sure, if you're listening on X or Facebook, go to www.theblackvault.com/live. Then that will bounce you to the YouTube channel. Make sure you are subscribed. That is going to be the easiest way to see all the content that I post. I am going to be much more active now that some personal obligations are now aside and in the past. So I'm pretty excited about that. So you will see me there the most, but when I do stuff like this, I will still continue to broadcast live on X and Facebook. Facebook is weird now. They're dumping live streams 30 days after. So silly. But I guess I don't know. Maybe they're struggling for disk space, I guess. I don't know. But that's why YouTube is obviously, as long as I don't get banned, we should have those videos there forever. So you will forever be haunted by my ugly mug for years to come. So make sure you're subscribed to that. If not, be nice out there, guys. It's always a pleasure. Thank you so much for listening. Truly, truly appreciate it. This is John Greenwald Jr. signing off, and I'll see you next time.